Chapter 81, Ming. I am Batman. Something's wrong, Quentin snapped into his earpiece. A projector, one of the units we planted in the square, is gone. I don't know who picked it up. Damn it, Quentin swore, furious that something had gone wrong at the worst possible moment. Wasn't the projector well disguised? I don't know. You should come and see. William's voice sounded anxious. Quentin had no choice but to abandon his attempt to bond with Peter. He made a weak excuse and sprinted back to his team. After Venice, the name Mysterio had caught fire across the city. Fury's push had been crucial, plus Peter's classmate had coined the name, but the public had been eager for a new hero since the Avengers disbanded. A powerful, showy figure like Mysterio filled that void overnight. Quentin thirsted for the prestige more than anyone. He could not let the deception be exposed. He hadn't gotten Edith yet. When he did, he planned to eliminate any threats to his lie, starting with Fury and Ming. But first, he needed the device. Now, with the projector missing, things were spiraling. After Quentin left, Ming climbed up onto the rooftop and sat down beside Peter. Fury was a little harsh, Lee said into the warm evening air. Don't take it to heart. Peter hugged his knees and let out a tired laugh. How are you doing, Peter? Lee asked. I didn't expect I'd be saving the world this summer. Peter said flatly. I had plans, personal plans. I wanted to ask someone out. Everything's ruined. That's not selfish, Lee replied, shaking his head. Being a hero and having a normal life don't mix. I know that. Peter stared. You're only, 4 or 5 years older than me? Lee smiled. Don't let the ages fool you. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. No way, Peter frowned. My story. When I was 12, my parents and I were coming home after a movie. A robber jumped out, stole my mom's pearls, and they were killed. Lie's voice softened as he told what sounded like his own story, and Peter felt the sympathy bloom instinctively. From that night, I trained myself. When I got older, I started going out into the streets to stop crime. At first, it was just scaring off petty thieves, then stopping robberies, murders, anything I could. Because you didn't want others to suffer what you did, Peter said. That's really great. You can call me Lee, he added when Peter hesitated. Okay, Lee, Peter said, relieved by the familiarity. Do you have a nickname out there? Lee smiled faintly. Batman. That's an awesome name. Peter's eyes lit up. He was moved. If anyone could understand the weight of loss and responsibility, it was someone like Lee claiming that history. Lee put a hand on Peter's shoulder. This path is hard, Peter. There are sacrifices, and you lose things. You've done well. Hearing praise from someone who sounded like a 10-year veteran warmed Peter. It's okay to want a normal life. I'd even recommend it, Lee said quietly. Peter blinked in surprise. You'd recommend quitting? Not quitting, Lee corrected. I'd recommend not rushing to be a global, headline-grabbing superhero. If you aren't ready, you could endanger yourself and people around you. The thought hit Peter where it hurt. He'd refused to use Edith because he feared his mistakes would hurt others. How did you prepare? He asked. Lie chuckled, a little embarrassed. It's a bit awkward to say, but my family is very wealthy. Wealthy? Peter's mind went to someone he knew. Lie nodded. On the level of the richest people. I had resources. I built a battle suit and trained my body. Technology came from my research department. Peter's pulse quickened. The parallels to Tony Stark were almost eerie. Like Iron Man? He blurted. Not as fancy, Lee admitted. I'm not a genius inventor. My team handles the tech. At first, my suit wasn't even sturdy. There was an incident where a dog ripped it. That's when we added more protection. Peter grinned despite himself. Mr. Stark's armor had a bunch of problems too in the beginning. An idea began to buzz in Peter's head. Tony had given him Edith with the inscription, "To the next Tony Stark." To Peter, seeing another wealthy hero who'd built a suit and fought crime felt like fate nudging him. Maybe Tony intended Edith for someone like Lee. Peter's face must have shown the change. Lie noticed and understood how much leverage he now had. But Lie's ambitions went beyond just Edith. He wanted control of Stark Industries itself. He needed more. I'm grateful to the people behind me, Lee said casually. People like Quentin and his team who supported Tony. Peter froze. Quentin has a team? Quentin isn't the lone Mysterio you think he is, Lee said. When I first came to this world, I met his team. They told me a lot, said that many of Tony Stark's technological breakthroughs were actually developed by them. Peter shook his head. No, Tony built his tech. You and him were close, Peter. I assumed you knew, Lee said. Quentin told me Tony had something that could help me get back to my original universe, but to get it, he needed the backing of a recognized superhero. Peter's heart raced, so Quentin wanted a superhero's influence to get access to Stark's tech. Lie's eyes narrowed, and it looked like a chill passed over him. They lied to me. They have other intentions. The rooftop was quiet for a long moment, the city's lights humming below. Peter's mind was a knot of questions and distrust. Quentin's frantic call and the missing projector suddenly fit into a darker pattern. Lie's confession left room for even more uncertainties, but one thing was clear. The people behind the masks were not necessarily who they seemed. What attempt? Peter asked, suddenly nervous. When I first arrived in this world, Quentin and his team used drones to fake a monster attack on a small town, Li Ming answered quickly. When I questioned him, Quentin claimed it was a drug den and even showed me a video. Peter frowned. They lied to you on purpose. Whatever they're planning, it's tied to a staged terrorist attack, Li Ming said, speaking like an experienced hero. His tone carried conviction, and it convinced Peter. I'll tell Fury, Peter blurted. Wait. Li Ming stopped him. Fury's intelligence network is stretched thin right now. We need to use every tool we have. Use your strategic intelligence. Defense. Peter fumbled for the name. EDIH, Li Ming supplied. Right, EDIH. Peter snapped to attention and opened the system. Search for Quentin Beck. Target found. EDIH mapped Quentin's last seen location in seconds. Li Ming projected the feed to Peter's phone. After leaving the hotel, Quentin had gone straight to a square in Prague with a large kinetic sculpture. Check the nearby surveillance footage, Li Ming told him. See what happened there. Peter complied. EDI's AI might worry Li Ming, but its capabilities were excellent. The surveillance showed a flash on the sculpture, then something dropped from an empty niche and landed at the feet of a girl crossing an alley below. She picked it up. Peter's throat tightened when the camera switched angles. MJ, he shouted. On screen, MJ crouched to examine the device. She fiddled with it a moment, and, like a scene straight out of the Venice incident, a gigantic water construct projected into the square, startling her. Peter's face went pale. It was the same kind of illusion the Mysterio projector had created before. Li Ming had planted it so MJ would find it as soon as she left the hotel. If she walked away, the projector would inevitably be in her path. If she hadn't left, Quentin could have had it delivered. Is that your girlfriend? Li Ming asked, watching Peter's reaction. Not really. She's not my girlfriend. I haven't. Peter stammered, then bit his lip when Li Ming interrupted. She's in danger. Call her. Peter was fumbling for words and options. Li Ming reached for his phone and, with a few quick gestures, used EDIH to place a secure call. Don't say who you are, Li Ming instructed. Tell her to move toward a crowded area, change direction a few times, and head to this location. He tapped a point on the map and turned it so Peter could see. No explanations. MJ's smart. She'll understand. Peter relayed the instructions, and MJ replied quickly that she would comply. Peter watched the feed anxiously as MJ began to move. How did you have a map? Peter asked, impressed. Whenever I arrive somewhere new, I study the surroundings, Li Ming said, folding the map away. Experience. Also, have EDIH hack into the nearby surveillance so Quentin can't track us passing by, Li Ming added. You're incredible, Peter said, for what felt like the 100th time that night. They didn't have time for praise. Swinging through the city would draw too much attention, so Li Ming found a car and they drove toward the rendezvous. Peter wanted to notify Fury, but Li Ming shook his head. Use EDITH, he said simply. Peter did, and EDITH placed a secure call. To Peter's relief, Talus, disguised as Nick Fury, answered. Between Peter's breathless, skip-ahead explanations and Talus's confused questions, the call took longer than Peter expected. Talus came away baffled, partly because he was a Skrull and now finding himself tangled in illusions arranged by another man who made a career out of deception. Hide in the car, Talus told Peter finally. I'll get MJ. As long as you don't show your face, Quentin won't attack MJ in public, Li Ming told Peter. Peter listened obediently. Outside, on Quentin Beck's end, things were deteriorating. Quentin had used surveillance to locate MJ and now saw Mercy's team warning him that Fury had people en route. He panicked. "Deploy every drone to block Fury," he barked. "I'm taking Peter's girl." One of his techs suggested a retreat. These were talented hobbyists chasing fame, not hardened supervillains. Quentin's jaw tightened. "EDITH," he rasped through gritted teeth. "If I get EDH, I can eliminate anyone who knows and fabricate whatever story I need to the public." "People will believe anything these days," his teammate muttered. By the time Quentin made his decision, Ming had already reached MJ. He stepped into the open square and shielded her with his body. When Quentin's drones buzzed down, Ming stayed calm, the kind of calm that put Peter's nerves on edge. "Quentin, stop," Ming called out, his voice steady. "Don't harm anyone." Quentin blinked at the unexpected confrontation, then sneered. "You superheroes are always in the way." Ming allowed himself a small, private moment of satisfaction. Quentin's words did exactly what Ming had wanted. They framed him as a genuine protector in front of the crowd. For now, that was enough. Chapter 83, a model textbook for superheroes. Quentin opened the fight by unleashing a swarm of drones. Ming yanked MJ to cover, drew his pistol, and briefly held the assault at bay. It wasn't that his handgun could really compete with the drones. Quentin surely hadn't intended to kill MJ, but staying close to her reduced the risk to both of them. Peter, however, didn't know any of that. To him, Ming was risking everything to protect his crush, and that only raised his admiration. He sprang into action. Wearing the Night Monkey suit without its AI assistance, Peter shot out a web and glued two drones together, then gave a savage tug. The drones tore into each other and exploded. Their construction couldn't withstand Peter's strength. Quentin wouldn't let him make it so easy. He tapped his arm console twice, and the environment around them shifted instantly. Without Edith's guidance, Peter couldn't tell illusion from reality. Mysterio sprang from the haze and fired magic at him. Peter dodged twice, then reminded himself the Mysterio was fake and tested it with his web. It was an illusion. He relaxed, only to have 2 or 3 more Mysterios pop up. He probed again and stuck one with webbing, thinking he'd trapped Quentin's real body. He yanked hard, and a car came hurtling at him, sending him sprawling. He scrambled up and looked up to see Iron Man armors bearing down from all directions. He dared not be reckless. He could only keep dodging. He heard MJ's screams and the crack of Ming's pistol. Both were also caught up in the illusions. A bullet grazed Peter's arm. He cried out as blood welled. "Peter? Damn it!" Ming snapped, sounding annoyed. He, too, had been fooled. "I'm fine, Lee. Are you two okay?" Peter called, trying to comfort him and get his bearings. "Temporarily safe," Ming answered. The darkness ahead peeled away. Peter saw an illusionary Mysterio holding MJ, while Ming lay unconscious nearby. He lunged forward to attack. "Peter, no! Don't be fooled!" cried Ming and MJ, voices that stopped Peter's fist mid-swing. Ming looked helplessly at him. Quentin's illusions had nearly tricked Peter into striking at him. Ming and MJ had their own phantasms to deal with, but because Quentin's main quarry was Peter, they were less affected. Peter, realizing how close he'd come to making a mistake, asked, "Lee, what should I do?" "Peter, come protect MJ. Let me handle this," Ming said. "No, I was tricked before. This is my responsibility." Peter raised his hands, determined. Ming glanced at him and noticed the blood had stopped flowing from Peter's arm. If he lingered much longer, the wound might heal. He needed to act now. "No, it's not your fault," Peter insisted. Even he and Nick Fury had been deceived. It wasn't Ming's fault. Quentin shifted tactics, trying to drive a wedge between them. "You always knew I was fake. Aren't we on the same side?" he taunted. "Aren't you supposed to be helping me?" Ming didn't bite. He forced a tired expression. "I agreed to let you impersonate Mysterio because you said you wanted to fight crime. I once thought you were actually on our side." Quentin spun a new lie. "You want to go home, right? You want to return to your original world. Hess, we can help you. Tony Stark's people can build the interdimensional restorer. If you don't believe me, ask Peter Parker. Only Stark-level tech can do this." Peter faltered. Tony Stark had done so much. Maybe there really was a way back. I don't know," he stammered. "There are things Stark could do that I wouldn't even understand." Ming kept his voice steady. "It could be a lie." "No, it's real," Quentin insisted. "If Stark can't send you back, No one can. Interfere, and you'll never go home. The possibility of never seeing Aunt May, MJ, or Ned again flashed through Peter's mind. He pictured himself having to choose between saving strangers and returning to the life he knew. He struggled with the selfish impulse, but Li Ming's next words cut through his doubt. If returning means helping evil and standing by while wrongs happen, I'd rather stay here forever, Li Ming said. Even if I can never go back, I am still a hero. Hearing that, Peter felt a rush of relief and admiration. Li Ming's resolve echoed something Tony Stark had once said about being a hero no matter the cost. Quentin's smirk faded. Negotiations had collapsed. Quentin barked orders and the drones opened fire. Peter grabbed a nearby car and used it as a shield. Li Ming reached for the Gotham scepter, the tear of the goddess flashing in its shaft. He looked at it with regret. This was a gift from my friends. Consider it their farewell present, he said, sorrow in his voice. Then the scepter erupted. Lightning cascaded from it in a brilliant chain, slamming into the swarm and setting off a series of explosions. 20 to 30 drones were shredded as arcs of electricity laced the sky. In that instant, Li Ming seemed godlike, calm, powerful, and resolute. To Peter, he looked experienced and responsible, someone who would sacrifice everything for others. Peter slid his hand into his pocket and tapped Edith. He had made his decision. Chapter 84, Gaining Authority. All the drones had been disabled, and Quentin's disguise had failed. He stumbled and fell, as if wounded by the explosions. Seeing him collapse and stop resisting, Peter relaxed and reached to check on MJ and Li Ming. Bang! Li Ming fired in another direction. The area had seemed empty, but after the shot, a figure of Quentin dropped, clutching a gun as if preparing for a final, desperate attack. When Peter looked again, the Quentin that had appeared earlier was only a hologram. There was still one drone left on the field. Thanks, Peter stammered, shaken. He wasn't badly hurt. His healing was strong. But if Quentin had gotten a shot at MJ, it could have been terrible. Don't mention it. Li Ming lowered his weapon and sighed, staring at Quentin's body. I was going to spare him. He wasn't really going to. The last drone had been left on purpose, an excuse to end Quentin and make sure he couldn't expose anything about Edith. Peter didn't feel much sorrow. He'd never trusted Quentin the way the movies did, but he still nodded at Li Ming. As Li Ming pulled a tissue and wiped the blood from Peter's arm, he said, Sorry, I nicked you. Peter waved it off. It's fine. I'll do it. Here, use a clean one. Li Ming handed him another tissue while holding the bloodied one. MJ stepped out then. It was too stuffy in the hotel, so I went for a walk. Oh. She reached into her backpack for a projector and then stopped when she saw Quentin on the ground. Looks like I don't need this after all. What a coincidence, Peter blurted, then rolled into rambling. Do you know how dangerous that was for you just now? MJ cut him off. Never mind that. Don't you have something to explain? She pointed at the black tactical suit Peter was wearing. Peter stammered twice, then gave in. All right, I'm Spider-Man. I knew it, MJ said nonchalantly. She wasn't surprised. If anything, she'd acted like she'd already guessed. Li Ming didn't interrupt. He walked over to the man posing as Nick Fury. Talos in Fury's skin had just arrived and was already on his usual gruff spiel. Is it over? That Oh, he's dead. Talos shrugged and explained the delay. Illusions. It was all illusions. 2 cars drove straight into the river. It's fine. It's handled. That Li Ming briefed Talos on what had happened. Talos had his people gather the key items and contacted local authorities to clean up the scene. Nothing like the old days. S-Shield used to take care of everything, but after the blip, their influence had waned. Once the fake Fury left, Peter hustled Li Ming into a corner and handed him the glasses. What is it, Peter? Li Ming asked, though he already knew what Peter wanted to do. When Mr. Stark left this for me, he wrote a line. Peter said, suddenly serious. To the next Tony Stark, I trust you. That probably meant he wanted you to grow into the role, Li Ming offered. Peter shook his head. No, I'm not ready. He knew every mistake I made. He must have known I wasn't ready for that responsibility. Peter, Li Ming said, refusing the glasses. This was left for you by Stark. If he thought you weren't ready, why would he give Edith to you at all? Maybe he didn't give it to me to keep. It was so I could pass it to the right person. Peter's voice grew more confident the more he talked. He couldn't give it to Fury. Fury would have kept it, so he trusted me to find the right person. So he trusted you to pass it to me? Ming sounded unconvinced. Yeah, I'm sure it's you, Li. Peter smiled. This world needs the next Iron Man, or Iron Batman, I guess. Ming almost refused again, so Peter tried one last argument. Edith can access Stark Industries' backend. You could look through Tony's research. There might be something that helps you get home. I think Mr. Stark would be happy if his work helped a superhero from another world. If you find anything, you can give Edith back to me. Peter felt pleased with himself. The reasoning was airtight. Ming hesitated, then sighed. All right. Peter put on the glasses and spoke to them as if they were a person. Edith, I want to transfer your usage rights to Ming. Any transfer requires confirmation, the voice replied. Confirm. Please hand the glasses to Mr. Ming. Peter took them off and handed them over, grinning. Welcome to the Avengers. Ming wore the glasses and the interface flashed to life around him. He familiarized himself with the system, then frowned. Peter? What? It says I can't access the Stark database. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Peter awkwardly took the glasses back on. Edith. Hello, Peter, the AI replied in Edith's flat, clinical tone. I want to transfer my permissions to Ming. Sorry, Peter, I don't have the necessary permissions to transfer to Tony's exclusive backend. The voice changed then, sliding smoothly into a warmer, more familiar tone. Hello, Peter. I'm Friday. How can I help you? After Jarvis's sacrifice, Friday had taken over as Stark's system, an infinitely smarter, more capable AI than Edith. Peter felt safer hearing her voice. Hi, Friday. I want to transfer my permissions to Ming. Peter, Friday said, your access level is the highest and cannot be transferred or deleted. It can be shared, however. Her logic was clinical but clear. If you share, the recipient will gain access to all of Tony's resources. Please decide carefully. Confirm sharing? Yes. Peter nodded, more at ease because Friday sounded more sympathetic than Edith. I believe Mr. Stark would agree with my choice. Confirmed. Please hand the glasses to Mr. Ming to record his biometric information. Peter eagerly removed the glasses and handed them back to Ming. Li put them on, and Friday's voice chimed again. Permission sharing successful. Hello, Mr. Ming. You can now access all of Tony Stark's permissions. Chapter 85. Iron Man's Spider-Man. The mystics of Camartage would make a fortune if they ran a travel agency. Ming grinned as he stepped out of a portal. This wasn't the pale blue swirl of a space portal, but an orange-yellow ring of sparks, Camartage's signature. Beside him, a man in a red cape looked on. In fact, very few at Camartage can own a portal from New York to Kathmandu in one go, the man said. Come on, Stephen, you just want to boast, Ming teased, then added, sincere. But it is amazing. Strange smiled and nodded, clearly pleased. I'm still very grateful you agreed to come to Camartage to learn, Ming said earnestly. It's nothing. It's an honor to help a superhero, Strange replied. After everything he'd been through, Strange's emotional intelligence had improved. He'd already heard about Ming's deeds from Peter and Nick Fury and held heroes like him in high regard. And I'm very interested in that source power you have, Strange admitted. I've never seen such a powerful, harmonious energy form that integrates so well with different systems. I'm sorry, I only know how to use it, not where it came from, Ming said truthfully. Ever since the exchange that granted him the source power, it felt like a new function had unlocked in his body, something he could operate instinctively but not explain. Most items taken from the space behaved that way. That's fine. The multiverse is full of wonders. Strange waved a hand. All right, I'm heading back to New York. See you, Li. He formed a ring of sparks linking Camartage and New York. See you, Stephen. Ming replied. After Strange left, Ming went back to his room at Camartage. After Quentin's death, his team had fallen apart. Most members had been arrested by Fury and couldn't get away. Peter, who had given Edith access and permissions to Ming, had gone to clear things up with MJ and, to his relief, successfully stopped being single. MJ had long been interested in him, even if Peter had been oblivious. Ming, through Peter's connections, reached out to Strange and stayed at Camartage to study magic. He had the source power, but the only technique he'd developed so far was lightning chain. It'd be a waste not to learn some sorcery, but what struck him now was the importance of mental attribute, something that had never been very prominent for him until now. His bare mental attribute was 18 points, nearly double the average person's. Yet compared with the new mystics at Camartage, Strange had evaluated Li Ming's aptitude as average. Considering Strange's improved diplomacy, Li Ming suspected his aptitude might not even meet that. Fortunately, he had the analysis privilege, so his pace wasn't too slow. After only a week of practice, he could already open short-distance portals, a result that surprised Strange, who had struggled for a long time to get started. Strange could only chalk it up to Li Ming's special talent. Still, practicing magic was something Li Ming did to pass the time. His real focus was Tony's research and the Spider-Man bloodline. He put on Edith glasses and connected to Friday's voice. "Friday, what's the progress on the fabrication platform?" 75%, sir. And the data transfer, already completed. Give me the fabrication platform and the data as soon as they're ready. Understood, sir. Tony had left behind too much genius. Li Ming prioritized the most useful parts. The fabrication platform was top of the list, a cubic metal box roughly the size of a washing machine that unfolded into a sleek manufacturing rig. Powered by an arc reactor and loaded with nanomaterials, it could produce almost anything Tony had ever built. A portable Stark factory. In the original plot, it appeared twice, once on the plane Happy was on, where Quentin destroyed it, and once in Happy's apartment, where Electro destroyed it. Poor Happy had gone through hell to get those things and lost them both times. Even with Tony's blueprints, Li Ming didn't have Stark Industries backing him. He could siphon resources from this world secretly, but in other universes he'd be stuck. With a fabrication platform, as long as he had raw materials, he could build whatever he needed and immediately become Iron Man in any world. Combine that with the Spider-Man bloodline, and he could go further. An Iron Man with Spider-Man's physical gifts. Not the Iron Spider Peter wears now. This would be Tony's armor on a body with Peter Parker's physiology. In short, Tony's tech with Peter's physical advantages. The Spider-Man bloodline had just been successfully analyzed, then Li Ming ran into a complication: weakened Spider-Man bloodline quality. Epic type, effect, grants a weakened Spider-Man bloodline. Grants strength plus 1730, constitution plus 80, agility plus 220, spirit plus 6, weakened adhesion ability, enhanced immunity, and spider sense. Can be upgraded by analyzing the same type of bloodline. The bloodline's power was undeniable. Li Ming did a quick conversion. In the Space's standard, 10 points of strength approximated lifting a 50 kilograms object. With plus 730 strength, he estimated he'd reach nearly 9 tons, enough to lift about 5 small cars at once. But the Spider-Man bloodline was specific. The spider bite that made Peter Parker Spider-Man would barely affect someone else, or could even be fatal. The same bloodline affected different hosts in different ways. So after analysis, Peter's unique bloodline had become a weakened version for Li Ming. A normal Spider-Man's limit was around 25 tons, often about 20 tons in general. Even the young Spider in the Avengers had over 10 tons. The weakened version's 9 tons was smaller, but still astronomical compared to a normal person. A 173-fold boost to strength, an 8-fold to constitution, and a 22-fold increase in agility. Any Reincarnator would be ecstatic if they didn't have the analysis privilege and weren't aware of the plot. Can be upgraded by analyzing the same type of bloodline. That line made Li Ming pause. He didn't use the bloodline immediately because he wanted to try upgrading it first. In the original sequence, there would have been more Spider-Men appearing, usually 3 in a week. But Quentin had been killed by Li Ming, Peter's identity hadn't been exposed, and the subsequent plot beats wouldn't play out the same way. "Sorry, Peter," Li Ming murmured to himself. "This is for your growth, too." Since he now had Tony's research, Li Ming felt responsible for helping Peter improve. Even if one of the 3 major missions failed, he could still scrape by. Exchanging the current bloodline for a better one later seemed worth it. "Edith, is the video ready?" he asked. "Sir, it's complete." "Good. Send it to the Daily Bugle." Sent. Thanks to Xie Huanghun, Baiyue Bugui, and Bookfriend 2022-040932222151 for their monthly ticket support. Thanks to Yogu Cheng and Feng Yeje Fengle for their reward support. Today's antics. Please keep reading. Chapter 86. Peter's Good Friday. Peter felt like the luckiest guy alive. MJ had finally become his girlfriend, and she confessed she'd liked him for a long time. Aunt May and Happy had unexpectedly fallen for each other. They bickered constantly, but Peter was just glad May had someone. And in his life as a superhero, he had handed the heavy responsibility of EDAH to the trusted Ming, so he no longer had to shoulder the impossible expectation of being the next Tony Stark. He could go back to being his friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It all felt incredible. Lucky Ming's around, or my life would be a mess, Peter thought, swinging through New York with MJ in his arms. Swinging was his favorite thing again, that free, flying feeling. Today, he'd finally let MJ try it. She'd been excited for days. "I'm never doing that again." MJ said, a little green-faced when they landed. She'd barely kept from throwing up. "I can't stay here long." Oblivious as usual, Peter didn't notice her discomfort. After a quick goodbye, he leapt up onto a streetlight, ready to swing away. Then the giant billboards on the buildings around them all cut to the same breaking news. The superhero Mysterio, who rose to fame and then suddenly disappeared, has been murdered, the anchor announced. "We have an anonymous audio tape and distressing footage. Viewer discretion advised." Peter's stomach dropped. The screen showed Quentin Beck in Mysterio's costume, bloody and panicked. "Everyone, I might not make it through tonight," Quentin said, camera in selfie mode. "I did my best to take out the elementals and I'm badly hurt, but for some reason Spider-Man attacked me." The camera panned and captured the red and blue figure behind him. "Only I can become the next Iron Man," Quentin cried. Then, in a clear moment, he raised the camera, and the man under the helmet aimed it back at his pursuer. A voice, very similar to Peter's, came from under Spider-Man's mask. The news cut to J. Jonah Jameson at the Daily Bugle, livid and triumphant. "This is undeniable," he spat. "Spider-Man mercilessly murdered a hero from another dimension who sacrificed himself to save our planet. He is a murderer." "And there's more," Jameson added with a grin. The screen switched back to Quentin's recording. In that clip, Quentin croaked one sentence. "Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker." "What the?" Peter gasped, hands to his head. It was over. The screen flashed a photo of his face. In an instant, the whole city, maybe the whole world, believed Spider-Man was Peter Parker and had killed Mysterio. The crowd around them flipped. Where there had been smiles and cheers, there were now shouts and accusations. "Did you kill Mysterio?" people demanded. "Murderer. Public enemy number one." The same news that had once celebrated Spider-Man's deeds had reduced him to a villain in people's minds. Ming watched the live feed sent by EDITH and shook his head. "Why be a superhero? Wouldn't it be better just to be Homelander?" he muttered. In his previous life, Ming had been raised under a different system. He wasn't the type to play at noble sacrifices. He wouldn't randomly slaughter innocents, but he also wouldn't twiddle his thumbs while criminals got away. Ming's moral line was flexible. Anti-hero territory, sometimes the Punisher, sometimes Deadpool, maybe even flirting with the villainous side when convenient. He was a reincarnator. His choices were pragmatic. Peter, though, wasn't like that. He was overwhelmed. Within half an hour, their apartment was swarmed. Media helicopters hovered, their cameras trained on his windows. That night, federal agents from the Department of Damage Control, the Stark-founded government-backed cleanup outfit, showed up and took Peter, Aunt May, MJ, and Ned into custody. They were separated, each put in a small room so the agents could interrogate them one by one. They had nothing to hide, and 8 hours of questioning turned up nothing. After spending the night in custody, they were released without charges the next morning. Peter called Ming, grateful and exhausted. "Ming, thank you. The lawyer you found was amazing." He should have known the lawyer would be amazing. Ming had gotten them Matt Murdock, Daredevil himself. Ming had grumbled to himself while arranging it, but he couldn't stand by when Peter was in trouble. He'd prepared materials and pulled every favor he could. "I got you out, but I can't help you with public opinion," Ming warned. "That's on you." "I'll do what I can," Peter said. "Right. I have to get back to my magic practice," Ming added, almost casually. Then, before they hung up, he sighed, "Magic is really something." Peter heard the words and tucked them into the back of his mind, but he couldn't dwell on anything except how fragile his life had become. He wasn't some invincible icon. He was a high school kid, and now every time he stepped outside, people called him a murderer. The official statement didn't matter. Once the narrative had been set, millions believed it. It wasn't only him. MJ and Ned were constantly harassed. They had to hole up in Happy's apartment for a while, just to avoid the worst of the storm. And the final blow came when MIT, the university all three had dreamed of attending and felt certain of getting into, rescinded their offers because of the controversy. Peter felt like his world was collapsing. As he sat in the quiet of Happy's apartment with MJ and Ned, the little voice in his head returned to Ming's line, "Magic is really something." Dear readers, keep up with the story, catch up quickly, and I'll have a little surprise for you. Heh. Chapter 87, The Brat Who Destroys the World. When Peter Parker got the rejection letter from MIT, he was at the pizza place where MJ worked part-time, sitting with his two best friends. The shop was at 233 Black Street. Peter knew another building on the same block had the address 177A. On impulse, he left the pizza joint and walked over to that other doorstep. The New York Sanctum. As an important outpost of Camartage, the Sanctum naturally had concealments, muggle-repelling charms and the like, but Peter and Dr. Strange had once saved half the multiverse together. The Sanctum would, of course, open for him. Strange appeared almost instantly. "Peter Parker," Strange said, clearly annoyed. "We barely managed to save Earth together. We've already destabilized space-time more than once. Now, because your life isn't going well, you want to do it again?" Peter told him why. Strange thought the idea childish. Peter tried to explain. "It's not just me. People around me, Aunt May, Happy, my girlfriend, they've had their futures ruined just because they know me. They didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Strange softened a little. After all, Peter had been his teammate in space. Still, he was helpless. "Even if I wanted to help, I don't have the time stone anymore." Oh, Peter's face fell. In his rush, he'd forgotten. The Infinity Stones in their universe were gone, destroyed by Thanos. "I'm sorry, I've wasted your time." He looked crushed. "Forget I said anything." Wong couldn't resist a jab. "He'll definitely forget. Ming says he's a master of forgetfulness. Every time Ming teaches him spells, he forgets which ones he already learned." Wong's teasing unexpectedly sparked an idea in Strange. "Forget?" "Wang, that's actually a good reminder," he thought aloud. "The Oblivion Charm. I can cast the Oblivion Charm to make the world forget that you're Spider-Man," Strange said. "That way your life can go back to normal." Peter lit up. "Can you really do that?" Wang protested immediately. "No, the Oblivion Charm is too dangerous. It's reckless to cast it on everyone, and the charm itself is uncertain." But Strange waved him off. "Haven't we used it before? Remember Camartage's full moon gathering?" "I don't remember." Wang shook his head. "Exactly." Wang realized Strange had used such a risky spell before, possibly even with his help, and that Strange might know more about it than he did. He stopped arguing. Strange was more powerful. He should know his limits, unreliable as he often was. But he missed one crucial point. Peter himself was even more unreliable. Strange and Peter together could very well be the epitome of the brat who destroys the world. They went down to the basement. Strange began the incantation like a surgeon at work. "Once I finish, everyone in the world will forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Even I will forget." "Everyone?" Peter's voice tightened. He stepped forward. "Can't a few people be left remembering?" "This spell doesn't work in fragments," Strange warned. "Altering it mid-cast is difficult and dangerous." But they hadn't been specific about exclusions. Peter's anxiety spilled out. "My girlfriend, she can't forget everything we've been through together." "Okay, except her." Strange's patience thinned. "Ned, he's my best friend. He has to remember." "Fine." Strange paused, irritation showing. "Stop changing the spell." Peter kept thinking. "Ming, he can't forget me." "That's fine." Strange adjusted the pattern. It was getting more strenuous. "Oh, Aunt May, I can't believe I forgot her just now. When she found out I was Spider-Man, it was a mess. I don't want that again." Peter's nervous chatter continued. "And Happy? Wait, Happy. I'm not happy. I'm very angry," Wong muttered. "No, Happy's a nickname. Harold Hogan. He used to work for Tony Stark." Strange gritted his teeth. The magic circle in his hand wavered. "Can you please stop talking?" he snapped. The circle exploded. Space tore open. Strange could see figures, flashes, impossible angles, other universes leaking through the rent. He swallowed hard. This was getting out of hand. Strange forced himself to reel the incantation back in, seal the breach, and stabilize the sanctum. The surrounding space stilled. Peter asked, hopeful, "Did it work?" "No," Strange snapped. "You changed my spell 5 times. If I hadn't stopped when I did, there would have been a catastrophic mess." "Sorry." Peter's apology sounded small. "I always forget that you're still just a person." Strange rubbed his face. "I'm sorry you and your friends didn't get into school," he said, calmer now. "But this isn't the way. You need to appeal the decision. Try again. There are normal channels." Peter blinked. "You mean I could call the school?" Strange stared. "You haven't appealed yet?" "Well, I sent them the letter and—" Peter started, then realized how it sounded. "You came here to ask me to erase the world's memory instead of appealing?" Strange's incredulous anger came out sharp. "Really?" When Peter could only nod, Strange lost it. With one muttered command, he opened a portal and tossed Peter out. The sanctum door slammed shut. As Dr. Strange too said, Wang remarked from inside the sanctum, watching through a small window, "Dr. Strange really is the greatest threat to the multiverse. He hoards forbidden spells with no reverence, and that's how this kind of crisis happens." He went on, half lecturing, half amused. Strange had always wanted control, and after Avenger-level gambits that actually worked, his ego had swelled. Peter wasn't blameless either, of course, but the point was made. On the street, outside the sanctum, Peter pulled out his phone. "Edith, initiate a citywide search." His Spider-Man suit had been disconnected from the net by the Department of Damage Control. Out of respect for the authorities, he hadn't tried to bypass it. But Li Ming's Edith could still be accessed. Peter still had Tony Stark's permissions tied to him. No one on Earth could fully lock him out of everything. "Please enter the search target," Edith replied. "Spider-Man." Chapter 88. 3 Spiders in 1 Frame. Peter didn't have much time to relax. He had just chased someone onto a bridge, planning to talk to the vice president of MIT about enrollment, when a sudden commotion erupted. He quickly snapped on his nanosuit and shifted into combat mode. The first thing he saw were 4 massive mechanical tentacles, each capable of flinging cars off the bridge with a flick. As the giant metal appendages moved, Peter realized they were all connected to a slightly corpulent middle-aged man. "Hello, Peter," the man said. Peter had never seen him before, but the man clearly knew him. Their battle was fierce and brief. Peter found himself overwhelmed, pinned by the tentacles. Then, by luck more than anything, the torn pieces of Peter's nano-armor wrapped around the tentacles, allowing Peter to take control of them. The tide turned immediately. Before Peter could demand how the man knew him, a portal opened, and both of them were transported to the New York Sanctum's lower chamber. Strange was waiting there, watching. "Every wish has a price, Peter," Strange said. He stepped forward and explained. "That spell to make everyone forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man? You messed it up. Now it's starting to pull people who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man from other multiverses into ours." Strange led Peter to one of the cells. Inside slunk a large, bipedal lizard. "After you left, I caught this green, slimy thing in the sewers," Strange deadpanned. They didn't know how many crossover invaders might be wandering the city. Strange outlined a plan. He'd find a way to send them back, and Peter would be responsible for rounding them up. To help, Strange enchanted a gauntlet for Peter that could fire spells to teleport captured people to the Sanctum's dungeon. Peter recruited MJ and Ned and spent the day chasing leads. By nightfall, he'd managed to capture Electro and Sandman. In the small hours, he got a call from Aunt May. Norman Osborn had shown up at a charity center asking for Spider-Man. After that, there was no more activity. Assuming he'd tracked them all down, Peter returned to the dungeon. When everyone gathered, it was 5 major villains from 2 multiverses. After a tense conversation, they quickly realized they had all been pulled into this world at the moment before each had been killed in battle with Spider-Man in their own universes. It was a grim pattern. Strange thought he had a solution, the Darkhold. It could lock a faulty spell. If Strange cast a counterspell through the Darkhold, he could reverse the original misfire and send the intruders back to their respective multiverses. Peter remembered everything Aunt May had ever taught him: help those in need. He knew sending them back would return them to the deaths they'd otherwise have suffered. As Strange prepared to use the Darkhold, Peter's compassion snapped into action. Even though these were villains, he couldn't let them go to certain death. He intervened. Magic and will collided. Peter and Strange chased each other through the mirror dimension. Peter managed to web Strange up and somehow ripped the sling ring off his finger, leaving Strange temporarily unable to exit. With Strange immobilized, Peter had time to act. He transported the 5 villains to Happy Hogan's apartment, where Tony Stark's workshop still stood. Dr. Connors, Lizard, was too volatile to bring inside, so he was left asleep in the car downstairs. The other 4, Dr. Octopus, Electro, Green Goblin, and Sandman, were brought upstairs. Peter, optimistically or foolishly, let them move about the apartment with only minimal restraint. They betrayed him. Everyone turned on him at once inside Happy's cramped living room. Norman Osborn, in his Green Goblin armor, proved especially brutal. According to Stark tech files, the Goblin's strength is marginally greater than Spider-Man's, and Peter felt it. He was beaten senseless. Aunt May was nearly struck by the incoming glider when a spark ring portal opened up in front of her, sending the glider careening behind Norman and knocking him off balance. He scrambled back onto his glider and fled. The portal blinked open again, and Li Ming stepped through. "Li!" Peter gasped. For a moment he'd feared he'd lost Aunt May completely. "A few days apart, and you and Steven have managed to cause quite a mess," Li Ming said, surveying the chaos. He sounded utterly unimpressed. Peter scratched the back of his head and stayed quiet, then went still. 2 more figures stepped out behind Li Ming, 2 men in spider suits. One was wearing a mask identical to Peter's. The other was in casual clothes, but Peter could tell at a glance there was a Spider-Man suit hiding underneath. "Who are they?" Peter asked, pointing. The man in the suit peeled off his mask with a flourish. "Hello, Peter. I'm Peter Parker." The casually dressed man smiled and said, "Hello, Peter. I'm also Peter Parker." Peter stared, Toby and Andrew, the other Spider-Men, standing before him. He looked to Li Ming for confirmation. Li Ming nodded. These were indeed spiders from other universes. He'd used Edith to locate them the night before and had managed to win their trust as fellow heroes, though he hadn't gotten what he'd wanted, no blood samples. These 2 were experienced fighters, not easy marks the way Peter sometimes was, so Li Ming had let them be. "Where's Strange?" Peter asked. Li Ming pretended not to know. He might be at the Grand Canyon in Colorado?" Peter winced. "Not the real Grand Canyon, the one that's all mirrored reflections, the canyon inside the mirror dimension." "All right," Li Ming said, frowning slightly. "I'll find him." Then he turned to the others. "As for these 4, I want to cure them." Aunt May cut in. She hadn't died, and Peter's resolve hadn't changed since he arrived at the sanctum. Helping people was what he did. "Okay," Li Ming answered. "Then these 2 seniors should be happy to help you." "Of course." The 3 Spider-Men fell into a quick, practical rhythm. "I cured Connors. I can whip up an antidote," said the Spider-Man, who called himself the Amazing Spider-Man. He sounded confident and measured. "I think I can formulate something for Osborn, too. I've always wanted to try." The more brash Spider added with a grin. Click. The sound of a camera shutter broke the tension. All 3 Spider-Men turned to see Li Ming holding up a phone. "3 spiders in one frame," he said, grinning. "I've got to commemorate this." Thanks to Black Cat in the Rain, reader 2200121353027171047, and CXPTC for the monthly support from the 3 great masters. I spent ages trying to figure out how to type your names. Please, great masters, bless me with more follow-up reads to soothe my little heart. Moi. Chapter 89, Blood Acquired. The antidote had been developed astonishingly fast. Between their experience and equipment, the 3 Spider-Men made quick work of it. They'd come up with a numbering system by age. Toby's Spider-Man was Peter 1, Garfield's was Peter 2, and Holland's, youngest and the local, was Peter 3. Peter 3 still chose the Statue of Liberty as the battlefield. It was under renovation and secluded, less chance of collateral damage. In this universe, thanks to Captain America's outsized influence, the Statue of Liberty's right hand had even been refitted to carry his shield. It was absurdly Marvel. The 3 of them were more talkative than the villains. Holland was the chattiest of the lot. "You can shoot webs from your body?" he asked, intrigued, and Garfield leaned in. Peter 3 had challenged the villains on live news. Now they had a few minutes to trade questions. Yes, Peter 1 said. Among them, only he produced natural webbing, but not everywhere. You shoot from your wrists, Holland blurted, then looked embarrassed. Exactly, Peter 1 replied with a little grin. Wrists. Holland's questions kept coming, the one that had been gnawing at him for months finally out. How do you keep your superhero life from ruining your personal life? Like MJ? Toby nodded before Holland could finish. MJ? Garfield's smile fell. I don't have a girlfriend, he said quietly. I lost my MJ. I don't know how to be Peter Parker anymore. It takes time, Toby said. He'd had his own share of trials, but he and MJ had made it through. He glanced at Garfield as he spoke. We can't give up. We have to try. Whatever it costs, Garfield added. We have a responsibility to help people. That's what Spider-Man is. With great power, Garfield began, and Toby finished almost automatically, comes great responsibility. Holland felt something open inside him at that line, like a quietly building courage. The older men's words planted something. Their talk was cut short as the villains attacked and the battle erupted around the scaffolding and steel of the renovation site. At first, the three Spider-Men moved like three lone fighters sharing a roof rather than a team, but their coordination began to improve. Ming watched from the edges. When their teamwork smoothed, he dropped through a sling ring portal into the mirror dimension and stepped out beside Dr. Strange. Ming couldn't help a jab. The greatest spellcaster on Earth, trapped by his own trick by a high schooler. No wonder you never made Sorcerer Supreme, he said, half mocking. I was about to break free, Strange defended, though with a rueful look. They came together on the pedestal and took stock. MJ and Ned were cornered by the lizard on the crown's platform. The portal would not close. Strange threw up a repelling charm and pushed the lizard back, joining Ming on the rim. The Darkhold had landed in Strange's hands, stolen from MJ, and his first instinct was to use it to send everyone away. Wait, Ned shouted. Peter's curing them. His plan is working. Strange lowered his hand and looked. On the field, Sandman and Dr. Kurt Connors had already reverted to human form. Electro had been contained by a device that siphoned his electricity. Doc Ock had even snapped out of full control. The tentacles had been doing most of the mischief, not the man under them. Peter 3 had not asked everyone's permission before injecting the antidote. Connors had not wanted to become human again, but the change was happening. Are those two also Spider-Man? Strange asked, nodding at the allies. Yes, Toby replied. Triple the trouble. Strange's expression went wry. And you, Ned, you opened a portal? Ned puffed up. Yep. Strange watched the scene with a new, begrudging respect. When everyone regrouped, the last villain arrived. The Green Goblin swooped in, trying to snatch the Darkhold amid the chaos. Ming blocked him. Frustrated, the Goblin hurled pumpkin bombs that blew out a chunk of the platform, sending everyone tumbling into the air. The Spider-Men stuck to the masonry. Dr. Strange had his cloak. Ming covered the civilians with spells, but MJ was in free fall and no one could reach her in time. Holland lunged, but Green Goblin intercepted him. Without hesitation, Garfield leapt. He didn't notice where the jagged scrap of metal came from. An iron shard sliced his leg as he dropped. Blood poured down his trousers. He ignored it. He hit the air and wrapped himself around MJ, web shooters firing to anchor them to the side of the structure and slow their descent. He landed them like he always dreamed he would, like a practiced hero, and for a moment the relief was so fierce it made him cry. It felt like redemption. Ming had seen it all. He thought of the boy who had once caught a falling child with webs and of the one who couldn't save Gwen. The old regret hung around Garfield like a bruise. Gwen was beyond saving, he thought. How could webs alone have helped? But watching Garfield hold MJ, Ming felt that old ache settle into something softer. Meanwhile, Holland and Green Goblin had both landed. Holland's temper boiled over when he saw the man who had nearly killed Aunt May, and he went for him. For the first time that fight, a Spider-Man seemed ready to cross a line. Holland dragged at the glider, ready to use it as a weapon. Toby moved faster than Holland could register and pulled him back. Don't let anger rule you, Toby snapped. Holland's grip slackened. In the scramble, Green Goblin drove a sucker at Toby's back and hit him hard. Peter 2 arrived just then, flinging a syringe across the chaos. Peter 3 caught it and, hands shaking, drove it into the goblin. The serum hit. Green armor and a snarling mask fell away to reveal Norman Osborn, bewildered and human again. Li Ming arrived last. He took out bandages and a med kit and worked quickly to stop the bleeding on Toby and Garfield. He wrapped towels around the deeper wound in Garfield's leg and pressed until the blood slowed. He didn't stay to swap stories or to bask in heroics. He had already come for something else. He left the 3 Spider-Men to their quiet, bruised conversation and walked away with what he had wanted most. 2 small vials stained with red. He had the blood of 2 Spider-Men. Chapter 90, Spider-Man Bloodline. After a long while, Peter, reluctant but resolute, said goodbye to the 2 older Peters and activated the Darkhold himself, sending them back to their respective universes. Whether the villains' fates had changed was something Peter couldn't know. Li Ming stared for a long time at the spot where the 2 Spider-Men had vanished. Seeing this, Peter hurried over and asked, "Li Ming, what's wrong?" Now that the senior Peters were gone, Peter finally had the name Peter Parker all to himself. "Nothing," Li Ming said, forcing a smile. "I'm just a little envious seeing them go back." Peter and Dr. Strange, who had flown up behind him, exchanged sympathetic looks. They felt for Li Ming. He was stuck in this timeline. Li Ming, however, wasn't thinking about being trapped so much as about his chances of visiting other Marvel worlds. In this one, there weren't even any Infinity Stones. "Are you sure you're okay?" Peter asked. "Don't worry about me," Li Ming replied. Seeing the present Peter, Li Ming felt better about the lack of Infinity Stones. After all, he had a goofy kid here to provide him with equipment. "Has that previous spell been undone?" Li Ming asked. "Yes," Strange said. Even though the multiverse threat had been dealt with, Peter's personal crisis remained. The public still blamed him. Mysterio had revealed his identity, and the chaos the villains caused had made him infamous. Peter stood among the scattered fragments of the Statue of Liberty, looking hollow-eyed. "It's over," he muttered. "Now even more people will curse me." Li Ming patted his shoulder. "Don't worry, Steven's here." "What?" Strange startled. "Cast another forgetting spell?" Li Ming wanted to try. His main quest still mattered. Completing another objective would raise his score when the settlement came. Strange at first shook his head. He didn't want to use such a dangerous spell again. "Maybe the last spell failed because your magical cultivation wasn't high enough?" Li Ming suggested, feigning realization. "That's not it!" Strange snapped, pointing at Peter. "It's because this kid had you change the spell several times." "Then this time just cast it once," Li Ming persisted. "You did make some oversights last time." Strange thought a moment and grudgingly agreed. It had been reckless to cast such a thing on impulse without clear rules. "Only one chance," he said, holding up a finger. "No modifications." Peter went pale. Before he could say anything, Li Ming covered his mouth. "Except for us 3, make everyone forget Mysterio and everything he said," Li Ming told Strange. He spoke the exact terms. It wasn't necessary to make everyone forget Peter Parker. If everyone simply forgot Mysterio and anything that originated from him, then all the evidence and claims Mysterio had spread would vanish. Even if someone had learned Peter's identity from another source, anything that could be traced back to Mysterio would be erased. That would remove the root of Peter's current troubles. Because Peter's mouth was covered, the casting went smoothly. No one spoke up to argue the loopholes. Li Ming released Peter only after Strange finished the spell. Peter immediately grabbed his phone and frantically searched for news about himself. To his relief and amazement, topics about Mysterio's death, the revelation of his identity, and the associated outrage had all disappeared from the internet. The forgetting spell had worked. Strange watched in silence, then said quietly that such magic should be cataloged as forbidden, powerful, and dangerous, and that he would never use it again. Li Ming checked his main quests. Main Quest 1, prevent the world from forgetting Peter Parker, 30 days. Main Quest 2, prevent Peter Parker's identity from being exposed, 30 days. Main Quest 3, prevent May Parker's death, 30 days. Quests 1 and 3 had been completed. As for Quest 2, it had been exposed and then unexposed. Li Ming didn't know whether that would count as success or failure. Even if Quest 2 failed, completing 2 of the 3 still qualified as completing the world quest, which meant Li Ming would soon be able to return to his own world and treat his mother's illness. An S-rank rating might be out of reach after this series of compromises, but Li Ming felt it was worth it. The Spider-Man bloodline was too valuable. 10 days later, the blood samples from the 2 Peters were analyzed successfully. The original weakened Spider-Man bloodline had its prefix removed. Spider-Man bloodline, quality, type bloodline effect, grants the Spider-Man bloodline upon use. In the current state, provides attribute bonuses, strength plus 4978, constitution plus 96, agility 416, spirit 12, grants adhesion ability, enhanced immunity, and spider sense. For comparison, the weakened bloodline had given strength plus 730, constitution 80, agilities 220, spirit 6. Strength had jumped by over 3,000 points, and agility had nearly doubled. The bloodline now effectively combined the traits of the 3 Spider-Men. Tobey's Spider had the greatest strength, Garfield's had the highest agility, and Holland's had the most development potential. Li Ming estimated that a strength bonus of around 5,000 would translate to roughly 25 tons of lifting power, close to the official limit for Spider-Man. Tobey's train pull was estimated by some fans at 65 to 80 tons, so this new power level was likely an average between them. Which Spider-Man pulled down the mean, Li Ming didn't say. Constitution had increased significantly as well. With Li Ming's original attributes, his physical fitness was now about 12 times that of a normal person, and his self-healing had improved dramatically. On top of the adhesion ability and spider sense common to every Spider-Man, the enhanced immunity would make him resistant to most drugs and toxins, enough, in theory, to prevent comic book-style vampirism. One problem, I still can't shoot webs, Li Ming muttered. Producing natural webbing seemed to be Tobey's exclusive trait. Li Ming was ecstatic. His strength was about to get a massive boost. During his half-month at Camartage, he hadn't learned powerful spells, but he'd picked up many practical tricks, especially opening portals. Although the mirror dimension required special magic for others, Li Ming could substitute his source power. He opened the mirror dimension and stepped inside so he could activate the bloodline without disturbing the world. He also piled up a lot of food. He'd noticed that Garfield's Spider-Man ate a huge amount after getting his powers. Use Spider-Man bloodline, he told himself, heart pounding. A prompt dinged in his mind. Usage successful. Then there was silence. Li Ming opened his eyes and the world felt different. His hearing and vision were sharper, his reaction time quicker, and his physical strength noticeably increased. At the same time, a wave of hunger hit him. He grabbed the bag of potato chips he'd set down, and the bag burst under his grip. He picked up a hamburger and crushed it into crumbs with a casual squeeze. "I'll need some time to get used to this," he said, smiling wryly, although inside he was thrilled. He was Spider-Man now. Thanks for the monthly votes from Yangguang Kairang Dayaso, Qingyu Qingweibi, and Baiji Chao. Please continue reading and don't forget to bookmark collect. I beg you, please keep reading. Thank you. Chapter 91. Doing the easiest work, getting the most rewards. Li Ming spent 3 days mastering the rapid growth of his physical attributes. By the end of it, his stats had changed dramatically. Name Li Ming's strength, 498, constitution, 117, 116 plus 1, agility, 440, 439, spirit, 30, bloodline, Spider-Man, skills, fighting level 8, shooting level 7, firearms mastery level 6, John Wick combat template level 6, lightning chain level 0.4, Camartage magic level 1, staff sword mastery level 5, source power absorption, items, Gotham scepter, yellowed necklace, points, 556. If he returned to his previous world now, Li Ming could single-handedly crush both reincarnation squads in under 5 minutes, physically overwhelm them without breaking a sweat. Besides the surge in physical power, he'd also picked up some basics of Camartage magic. It was only introductory, but given the time he had, it was a solid start. Camartage magic excels in space and time manipulation. Time magic leans heavily on artifacts like the Eye of Agamotto, which was gone, but spatial magic alone held deep, potent techniques. Techniques Li Ming didn't have time to master before he had to go back. He promised himself he'd study them next time. He was watching the news. J. Jonah Jameson was on screen, arms flailing as he berated Spider-Man over the damage from the Statue of Liberty battle. Spider-Man saved the day again, but the Statue of Liberty was almost destroyed. What if next time he tears down the Eiffel Tower in Paris? If he really cares about people, he should unmask and show his face. The Mysterio uproar had faded. Peter Parker had returned to normal life. Aunt May was alive. Edith was saved, and the world hadn't condemned him. Everything had turned out almost perfectly. Tony Stark had a lot to thank Spider-Man for, protecting his legacy, watching over his assets, and keeping things from falling into the wrong hands. Li Ming smirked. Tony had trusted Peter more than he deserved. Peter had blown through much of the inheritance within months. From Tony's perspective, it was tragic. From Li Ming's, it was almost comedic. Friday, are the things I asked for ready? Li Ming asked through the Edith glasses. Sir, everything is complete. Do you want them delivered now? Friday replied, No, I'll pick them up myself. He entered New York through a sanctum portal and used a spark circle to reach the basement of one of Tony's villas. Tony owned a ridiculous number of properties. He'd casually mention buying them, and the AIs would just handle the rest. Down here was the Stark Industries crafting station Li Ming had set up, and several items already laid out. An arc reactor, Friday's AI storage disk, another crafting station folded up, and 2 suits of Iron Man armor, the Mark 45 and the Iron Spider armor. Li Ming could have built the Mark 85 from Avengers 4. He had the blueprints and the authorizations Tony left Peter, but the Mark 85 cost too much and required resources he didn't want to touch without Pepper's agreement. The Mark 45 was an excellent compromise. Arc pulse cannons in the palms, a unibeam in the chest, micro air-to-air and surface-to-air missiles, EMPs, lasers, railguns. Not nanotech, but it incorporated vibranium, so its defense was solid. It could be retrieved from personal space and donned in seconds, practically a one-man army. Li Ming painted it matte black instead of Tony's usual gold and red flourish. The Iron Spider armor was the close combat option, nanotech, flexible, perfect for hand-to-hand. 2 suits, one for long range, one for close quarters. With more resources, he could have fused their advantages, but this setup was sensible and efficient. He'd also prepared some small items to leave with his parents to protect them when he returned. Once he sorted their health and safety, he'd be able to spend longer in the reincarnation space without worry. He made 3 arc reactors, top-tier power sources in many worlds, and an AI storage disk for Friday. The extra crafting station was a backup. Tony's tech needed that framework to be fully realized. Li Ming loaded everything into the white pickup he'd snagged when leaving the John Wick world, stacking the arc reactors and armor like toys. This mission world had been the most rewarding yet, and it had been the easiest to complete. He'd needed only 2 major moves. Tony had entrusted Peter with enormous authority, not just because of their adopted son relationship, but because Tony wanted someone for Pepper and her daughter to rely on. He had not anticipated Peter squandering most of it so quickly. Li Ming had cleaned up the mess and profited accordingly. 2 days later, Strange messaged, the Scepter's enchantment was finished. Although Li Ming's bloodline now provided many attribute bonuses, the scepter still held immense mystical value. He planned to use the Owl Scepter as his main mystical weapon. The Iron Man armor would cover the scientific side. Since some time had passed since the Statue of Liberty fight, Li Ming asked Dr. Strange to enchant the scepter and increase its capabilities. Strange held the Owl Scepter with curiosity. This material is very odd, but incredibly powerful. I can't turn it into a full magical artifact, nor can I harm it in the least, Strange said. But I had no problem inscribing amplification spells. I put 3 enchantments on it to suit your needs. Energy conduction, energy absorption, and energy burst, Strange explained. It already had decent conductivity. I've just strengthened it. Try it. Li Ming attached source power to the scepter. Orange-yellow sigils flared along the shaft, and he felt the power flow through it much faster. The energy absorption and energy burst ideas came from his insights into the Black Panther suit, simple but very practical. With a thought, the scepter released an aura of light just over a meter across, knocking a nearby table over. Strange snapped his fingers and restored the table. It can repel foes, but it won't deal significant damage, Strange said, shaking his head. That's fine. It's mainly for emergencies. At least now I don't have to worry about getting hung over the Grand Canyon, Li Ming joked. Strange rolled his eyes. By the way, Li, are you leaving? Li Ming nodded. 2 days and then home. He was satisfied. He'd finished the easiest work and gotten the most rewards. Yes. Li Ming understood what Strange meant. Since he was about to return, he made an excuse. While researching Tony's technology, he had accidentally found a portal to the multiverse, and he wanted to see if he could get back to his own world. When? Strange asked. Li Ming glanced at the mission timer and held up one finger. 1 day? No, 1 second. Ding. The mission countdown ended. Before Li Ming could finish, the familiar shimmering portal opened. Stephen, do me a favor, Li Ming said. Strange sighed. He felt like a babysitter, but Li Ming had helped him solve a major problem, so he wasn't going to object. Dr. Strange drew a circle with his hands and opened a small spark portal. On the other side was the basement where the little pickup truck was parked. New York and Kamartaj were too far apart for Li Ming to open a portal that distant by himself, but Strange could bridge the gap. Li Ming wasn't in a hurry to jump in. He watched Strange curiously, hands motioning. Stephen, you can open portals without the circle. Why do you always draw it? To save magic, Strange replied, ignoring the complaint and studying the new portal instead. Li Ming drove the truck up to the swirling doorway. Strange peered at it. A very advanced portal. No residual traces. I can't even be sure it's magic. Facing the unknown, Strange didn't press Li Ming to stay. He had already given his advice and could understand the man's urgency to get home. Li Ming tapped the car door twice. See you, Stephen. I hope we meet again, Strange said. Then, as an afterthought, oh, and please give that thing to Peter for me. Li Ming started the pickup and drove straight into the pale blue vortex. Strange watched him go, then opened another tiny portal, pulled an object from the other side, and tossed it inside. Okay, it's given. He shut the portal and rubbed his hands together. Task done. Miles away in a pizza shop, a watch materialized in front of Peter Parker and MJ. Everyone felt the familiar tug of Strange's magic, but the portal closed right away. Strange didn't want to talk. Peter slipped the watch on his wrist, and a voice he knew popped into his ear. Hello, Peter. I'm Karen. Before leaving the world, Li Ming had returned the strategic weapon Edith to Peter. The glasses had been only a carrier. To avoid drawing official attention, he disguised it as a watch and replaced the AI with Peter's own confidant, Karen. Li Ming knew this world would be his exclusive domain, but he still left some assets for the kid. Superheroes as easy to fool as Peter were rare. Better to give him a little help than lose any chance of continuity if Li Ming ever returned. Scanning. Scanning complete. The Abyss Favored One is uninjured and requires no treatment. Main Quest 1. Prevent the world from forgetting Peter Parker. Mission time, 30 days. Completed. Main Quest 2. Prevent Peter Parker's identity from being exposed. Mission time, 30 days. Completed. Main Quest 3. Prevent May Parker's death. Mission time, 30 days. Completed. Main Quest evaluation. A. Rewards obtained, 12,000 points, 4 free attribute points, Reincarnator level advancement. Main Quest completed. World 19999923 has been converted into an exclusive world. No other Reincarnator may enter. Li Ming frowned at the evaluation. As expected, only an A. The world had been made to forget Peter Parker, but Spider-Man's identity had still been exposed, so perfection wasn't possible. He climbed out of the truck into the pure white space and stared at the mission settlement screen. Another prompt chimed. Ding. Current Reincarnator level, Tier 2. Tier 2 privileges activated. Reincarnators can exchange loot for points or improve mission evaluations. Are these privileges available to all Reincarnators? Li Ming asked. Yes. He had long wondered about the economics of the space. Exchange items in the shop, especially valuable ones, cost tens of thousands of points. An S-rank mission granted 20,000 points. Enough, but only if you could actually get an S-rank. Most Reincarnators wouldn't know the plots well enough to consistently achieve that. How, then, could most of them afford good gear? And without boosting, they might not even survive subsequent missions. No one would save points without a reliable backup. The space's system made sense when he thought about it as a whole. Higher Reincarnator tiers had more ways to earn points. The space encouraged exchange during settlement as a win-win. Reincarnators submit loot to gain points. The space mass produces desirable items and puts them in the exchange shop. Other Reincarnators use points to acquire those items and get stronger, then go back into mission worlds to gather more loot for the space. It was a closed loop that kept supply and demand flowing. Ming's head buzzed with possibilities. Most Reincarnators didn't have privileges like his smuggling. They had to authenticate items with points before bringing them into personal space. Without exchange, loot that couldn't be authenticated would be wasted, so players would stop collecting it. Allowing exchanges changed the incentives. Even unauthenticated items retained value. Ding. It is detected that the Abyss Favored One possesses items that can improve mission evaluation. Tony Stark's scientific research achievements. The Abyss wants Tony's technology. Ming's eyes narrowed. That was the odd part. The space wanted Tony's tech. If the space already stocked such technology in its exchange shop, it wouldn't need to request it here. The implication was that the Abyss-level space didn't possess Tony's research. Otherwise, it wouldn't flag it as something it wanted. He thought for a moment and then spoke aloud, more to himself than to the space. Actually, an A rank is fine. I don't need to hand over Tony's research just to nudge the evaluation higher. Small improvements aren't worth the cost. Still, the exchange shop was tempting. Ming had plenty of loot. The Spider-Man bloodline was locked in his analysis panel. Only he could use it, and it couldn't be taken out. The Iron Man armor itself was off the table, but he had 3 arc reactors. He hovered over the options. Exchange arc reactor. Ding. 1 arc reactor can be exchanged for 20,000 points. Ming pouted. It felt like low pay for something so valuable, but the exchange market was a buyer's market. He accepted the trade. He made a mental note to test this system on his old friend Penguin later, seeing how the space-monetized mission loot might be profitable in other ways. For now, he had what he needed. Points, a level up, and the quiet assurance that he hadn't handed over Tony Stark's greatest secrets. Ahem. Thanks to Great God Gengsheng for the monthly pass support. Next world, back to Gotham. Wahaha! Today's collection increase is tiny. I'm begging everyone. Please, please, please. Chapter 93. New Privilege. Time to pay up. Ming's meaning was clear. The pure white space fell silent for a few seconds. Ding. Tony Stark's research achievements can be exchanged for mission evaluation boost, 50,000 points. Abyss didn't beat around the bush. A reactor alone is worth 20,000, and these research achievements are worth many, many reactors, it added. Ming tried to bargain playfully. I worked so hard on them. Wasn't it all for Abyss? He sighed. Other spaces are so much better, Reincarnators in groups, and I'm stuck fighting alone. No sooner had he said it than Abyss flashed another prompt. Ding. The current mission world's S-rank reward has been updated to New Abyss Privilege. Ming wordlessly pulled out his crafting table, exported a data hard drive, and held it up. Exchange. The hard drive dissolved into light. The system promptly acknowledged, Ding. The current world mission evaluation has been upgraded to S. Ding. 50,000 points obtained. When you're out to make a living, you need to know when to quit while you're ahead. Abyss's asking price for the new privilege had been high. 50,000 points was not trivial. But Ming only copied a piece of data. He lost nothing. Why not take it? If every Reincarnator did the same, no space would trouble with them, and this had been a test from Abyss. Ming had always enjoyed several privileges from Abyss. Besides the 3 obvious ones, return, analysis, and stowaway, there were probably many hidden favors. He'd wanted to see if Abyss would bargain. That it agreed so readily meant Abyss valued him more than he'd thought. If he needed something in the future, he could try negotiating again. Another prompt appeared. Mission reward changed. 20,000 points, 5 free attribute points, recruitment privilege. Recruitment? Ming's interest peaked. Had Abyss offered this because he'd mentioned being alone? Abyss privilege, recruitment, exclusive privilege. The Abyss Favored One can recruit up to 5 people to form an independent reincarnation squad. After the squad completes world missions, the Favored One can draw profits from the squad's spoils. Did I just get promoted? The The privilege felt oddly like a workplace promotion. He pictured a boss slapping his shoulder. "You've done well. I'll promote you to manager. Go recruit a few people. Lead a team. If they do well, you take a cut." Letting Li Ming choose recruits felt like Abyss delegating a slice of its spatial authority to him. But Reincarnation Space wasn't an ordinary company. As far as he knew, once someone entered, they couldn't leave. And this reincarnation squad would be independent. Typically, it wouldn't go on missions with him. If he randomly recruited people, wouldn't he be putting them at risk? If he was going to recruit, he needed people without attachments so they wouldn't demand to return. They also needed to be competent enough to survive in reincarnation space. Li Ming added another condition. It would be ideal if they were villains. He wouldn't feel guilty if they died there. He certainly didn't want to recruit friends or anyone from his original world. He couldn't tolerate anyone who knew his background entering the space. He wanted unattached, capable, preferably evil people, 5 of them. Ideally, they'd appear in groups so he could recruit and replenish them easily. He shook his head. He knew it sounded greedy. Where would he find a cluster of such people? He glanced at his scepter, thinking. In any case, he put the privilege aside. It wasn't something he could use immediately. He'd have to wait until the next mission world. Mission settlement complete, Li Ming exhaled. A smile crept across his face without his noticing. Abyss favored 1. Please choose. 1. Return to reincarnation space. 2. Return to the original world. Return to the original world. Teleportation portal has been opened. Next world mission countdown, 30 days. The swirling portal opened. Li Ming smoothed his clothes and stepped through. He emerged by the familiar riverside at night. He pulled out his phone. August 12th, 2225. More than a week had passed. He'd thought only 5 days had gone by. The time in reincarnation space had added up to a total of 5 months, and the world had advanced more than he expected. It was too late to call his parents, so he didn't. He put on a pair of glasses, replicas of Edith's that he'd made with the crafting table. The AI inside wasn't Edith. It was Friday. "Friday, can you connect to the network?" "Yes, sir." Friday was Tony's top AI. Wherever there was a network, she could access a lot. Check Central Hospital's medical records. Limited by equipment and Tony's original settings, Friday couldn't brute force her way into locked servers, but she easily found a doctor's account and password on the public net and pulled up Li Ming's mother's records. With relief, he scanned them. With proper medical care, his mother's condition hadn't worsened. Her mental state had even improved. He checked his father's records too. No major problems, just some hidden issues from years of fatigue. "All solvable," Li Ming muttered. "Friday, search this world for supernatural phenomena." The country he was in called itself Doxia. Li Ming was curious whether this world had any supernatural powers. "Sir, no supernatural phenomena have been discovered in this world," Friday replied quickly. Li Ming didn't feel disappointed. No powers meant his parents would be safer. He walked home. He could have used the transport in his personal space, but he liked walking. He could sort his thoughts. He'd brought back some gold bars, but he didn't plan to sell too many at once. Frequent or large sales would attract attention. He'd already sold a lot in a single night before when he'd urgently needed money. This time, he had time. He started thinking about how to make more money, fast and cleanly. Start a company, he decided. Low cost? An internet company. Fast returns? Internet media. Of course, starting a real internet company wasn't cheap, but Li Ming had an incredible advantage. Friday. He also had a trove of Tony's tech. His goal wasn't to recreate Stark Industries, it was to earn enough to give his parents a comfortable life. Friday. Help me register a company. Friday drafted a plan almost immediately. Procedures could wait until morning. Having an AI assistant like Friday made things so much easier. Li Ming planned to hand over day-to-day operations to Friday entirely. She could run everything, even if he wasn't physically present. His strategy was straightforward: produce a web series to build fans. To avoid controversy, he'd start with an anime adaptation to grow influence, then monetize. Investors and returns would follow. Quentin Beck, Marvel's brilliant director, had shown him detailed methods in The Last World. Virtual scenes from the second build were realistic enough to be mistaken for the real thing. Using them to make anime would be a major advantage. Even when he went to reincarnation space, Friday could keep producing episodes. Sir, please name the company, Friday asked. Li Ming thought for a moment and smiled. Mysterio. Thanks to Shuchenode and Wild Little Menction for their monthly ticket support. Thanks to Yuegu Cheng for the reward support. It seems the current limit is 5,000 words a day. Wah woo wah. Chapter 94. Curing Cancer. Friday wasn't just going to register one company, but Li Ming didn't need to worry about the operational details as long as it could function normally. As for what to film, he decided not to adapt any works from his previous life. His advantage was knowing the plots, and he wouldn't leave any chance of spoilers for others. Instead, he planned to adapt this world's literary classic, Record of Chaotic Gods, a work with prestige comparable to Journey to the West in his old life. The copyrights were public, and the story, immortals causing chaos among mortals and a hero stepping forward to set things right, was perfect. Friday's computing power combined with the second construct's scene-building tech could create character models that matched audience expectations and present the story with realistic, spectacular effects. After watching the first episode, Li Ming was very satisfied. The visuals surpassed the big-budget animations he remembered. Still, some fine-tuning was needed. Friday reduced the realism of the visuals by 20%, he told the system. It was too convincing. There had to be a clear line so people could still tell animation from reality. The production could outshine the world's top standards, but it couldn't be over the top. The next morning, Li Ming put the gastric cancer cure potion into a briefcase and went to his mother's ward at Central Hospital. As he closed the ward door, he casually set a small monitor on it. Minger! Minger! Seeing him, Father Li and Mother Li were ecstatic. After so many days without news, they'd been worried. Seeing him safe in person finally eased them. They even thought he looked healthier, more vigorous than the last time he had returned. Minger, why are you wearing glasses? Father Li asked. Oh, these. Li Ming adjusted his Edith glasses. They're just for show. They suit you, but my son is handsome even without props, Mother Li said with a smile. Her complexion had improved since last time, and she spoke cheerfully. They chatted for a long time, mostly his parents talking while Li Ming listened, because they all knew his work wasn't something to discuss openly. Mother Li praised the attentive care in the hospital and how professional every doctor and nurse in their ward had been. It seemed Director Zheng had really taken his words to heart. Li Ming nodded. Father Li mostly talked about odd incidents outside the hospital. He said that whenever he went out now, help seemed to appear whenever he needed it. A few days ago, he'd had a small dispute at the market, and two young men had shown up and argued his case until Li Ming stepped in to break it up. People helped him carry things, and sometimes a car would pick him up and drop him off. Xiao Ming, are they plainclothes officers or something? Like on TV? Father Li asked in a hushed, curious tone. Just think of them as toughs, Li Ming said lightly. He remembered the young man who'd come to trouble him and been scared off. The fellow's name was Changzi. He shook the thought away and told his parents why he was there. Mom, Dad, let's get you discharged, he said, glancing through his glasses to make sure no one else was watching. He lowered his voice. I've found a way to cure Mom's illness. His parents froze and stared at each other. Mother Li, who had lived with the disease long enough to know its limits, looked incredulous. How is that possible? My illness is incurable. Li Ming expected their skepticism. He used the one explanation their generation trusted: officials. The officials have developed a special medicine that can cure cancer, but it hasn't been through clinical trials, he said. I did them a big favor recently and secured an experimental slot for you. As always, he put it on the officials. The idea sparked hope immediately. Father Li leapt up in excitement and started hurriedly packing. What should we bring? Toiletries? A change of clothes? Let's go now. He had watched Mother Li suffer for over a year. Now that there was a chance, he couldn't contain himself. Dad, Li Ming had to call out twice to calm him. He sat his father on the edge of the bed near Mother Li. We can't draw attention. This medicine is extremely rare. If word gets out, the fallout would be huge. The officials gave it to me directly, and Mom can use it now. He opened the briefcase and took out the green glass bottle. He popped the cap and handed it to his mother. Mom, just drink it. Mother Lee looked at him, at Father Lee, and then nodded. Okay. Father Lee hesitated. Does it have any side effects? He asked, worry creasing his face. Better to live in pain than risk making things worse. Don't worry, Dad, Li Ming said. He had checked carefully. Products from the space wouldn't bring lingering side effects. Mother Lee didn't dither. She tipped the bottle back and drank in one gulp. No taste, she said, then paused. The sound of her voice was strong, loud in a way it hadn't been since before her illness worsened. Father Lee and Li Ming both stared, astonished and elated. Color rushed into her cheeks, strength returned to her limbs. With Li Ming's quick support, she pushed herself up and actually sat unaided. Her muscles were still weak from lack of use, but she was sitting up, something none of them had expected. It took effect so fast? Father Lee choked on his words and then broke down, tears streaming. It's cured. It's finally cured. Li Ming had never seen his father cry when they received the diagnosis. The sight made his own relief, like a physical thing. He seized the moment and took 2 Xuanyuan pills from his pocket, items he had exchanged for earlier, and handed one to each of his parents. Eat these too, Dad, Mom. They accepted them with trembling hands as the ward filled with a kind of stunned, joyous silence. Chapter 95. No More Worries. The Xuanyuan pill. Just the name sounded like something from cultivation, and in Li Ming's case, it lived up to that reputation. He watched, astonished, as his parents seemed to turn back the clock. They didn't literally become children again, but they looked 10 years younger, and more importantly, their bodies were restored to something like their prime. Li Ming didn't tell them where the pill came from. He only told his parents, very solemnly, that they mustn't tell anyone, no matter who asked. They understood how miraculous it was and agreed to keep the secret. The 3 of them packed their things and went straight to complete the discharge paperwork. Before they left the hospital room, Li Ming slipped each of them an earpiece, like the ones Quentin used, that could project a face over theirs. Walking out as they really were would have drawn far too much attention. When Director Zhang heard they were leaving, he rushed over, worry written on his face. He assumed something had gone wrong and feared that once Li Ming's mother was discharged, Li Ming might expose his secret. Why are you leaving so suddenly? Her condition still needs monitoring, he said as he approached. Li Ming told him, simply, we want to take Mother traveling. Let her relax. Director Zhang seemed to understand. After all, terminal patients often want to see the world when cure seems unlikely. He said his goodbyes and escorted them to the hospital gate, his eyes fixed on Li Ming. Li Ming stepped forward and offered his hand. When Zhang took it, Li Ming leaned close and murmured, so only the 2 of them could hear, "We're even." It wasn't until the family was tucked into the car that Zhang finally relaxed and opened his closed hand, revealing a memory card. With Li Ming's parents discharged, Zheng's leverage had dwindled, so Li Ming could afford to be magnanimous. Besides, he now had Friday, so a memory card meant very little. When the time came he truly needed something, Zheng would not be able to hide from him. Don't ask where Friday came from. If you must know, it's from Gotham. Li Ming's current mannerisms were all Gotham's bad influence. True to his word, Li Ming did take his parents traveling. If word had gotten out that his mother had recovered so remarkably, reporters would have been on their doorstep in no time. Traveling was perfect. They weren't recognized, his parents were happy, and they could enjoy the scenery in peace. While Li Ming's family toured the country, Qixun, the biggest streaming site in Daxia, released an anime called Records of Chaotic Gods, and it exploded across the network in under 2 days. Liu Qi, a longtime Qixun user and anime fan, had been feeling deprived lately. There hadn't been a hit anime in ages. He scrolled through the new releases, unimpressed. Shabby covers, heavily photoshopped posters that didn't match the content. Then one image stopped him cold, an exquisitely rendered cover that stood head and shoulders above the rest. Records of Chaotic Gods? Who still made that old theme these days? Everyone in Daxia knew the basic story, so you couldn't invent plot twists easily. Success depended on visuals and effects. The cover for this show looked like it had spent a fortune, even if it were photoshopped. Liu Qi couldn't resist clicking. The first scene matched the book. An evil god wipes out a human city with a single sweep of his palm. The special effects were so realistic that Lucci felt the palm coming for his own head. The crowd's terror, the little details on extras' faces, none of the usual recycled expressions made the tragedy visceral. Liu Qi watched the whole first episode in one sitting and was ecstatic. "This is absolutely the most meticulously produced anime ever," he declared. Then he clicked for episode 2, and it was gone. Qixun had only released a single episode. On the show's message board, viewers begged for more. "You can't stop at one. Release one episode a minute. Don't make us wait. That was too short." The fervor spread. People searched for everything they could about the production team. The name on the credits was odd, Mysterio Pictures. The company seemed to have come out of nowhere. The internet turned up nothing about its staff or legal representatives. It had been founded less than a week ago. Industry insiders were baffled. The quality alone proved massive investment, or at least an extraordinary team. How could a studio barely a week old produce anything like this? No one could find the people behind it, so no one could talk about cooperation, acquisition, or partnership. The mystery only increased demand. This was exactly the plan Li Ming had set up for Friday: hunger marketing. He guessed his next return to that other world might be some time off, so he left a copy of Friday in this one to handle things. With her here, he wouldn't have to worry about his parents' safety. He also put Mysterio Pictures under Friday's management and made sure his parents would never lack money for anything they wanted. To his parents, he described Friday as an assistant charged with caring for the elderly couple when he was away, even though the assistant never showed her face. Li Ming traveled with them for a month before they decided to part ways. Daxia's landscapes were so vast and beautiful they could keep exploring for decades if they wanted. After working hard for half their lives, it was time for his parents to enjoy themselves. Li Ming, too, was preparing to embark on his next journey. Searching for Mission World. Thanks to the damn nickname I won't change and Yuzhou Qingyu for their monthly ticket support. Thanks also to Yuzhou Qingyu for the reward support. Next chapter, Returning to Gotham. Wala la la. Please keep reading. Thanks. Chapter 96, The King of Gotham Returns. Before the mission countdown finished, Li Ming realized he had already gone through 3 mission worlds in the reincarnation space. Should he kick off a faction confrontation this time? Searching for Mission World. Ding, this is the 3rd mission world in the reincarnation space. You may choose to enter a dedicated world to complete the mission. Please choose 1. World ID 119. 2. World ID 1199923. Li Ming raised an eyebrow. The Abyss's prompt was oddly specific. He was stepping in for the 4th time, but the Abyss marked it as the 3rd mission world, which meant the first mission had not been counted. That made sense. Normal reincarnators only complete 1 mission world on their first entry, but because he had the return privilege and went home the first time, Li Ming had already finished 2 worlds the first time he entered. The Abyss was once again helping him exploit a quirk in the system. He didn't mind. 1 more mission world before a faction showdown sounded fine, especially since he hadn't returned to the space this time and still had over 90,000 points banked. Right now, Li Ming had 2 dedicated worlds, Gotham and after Spider-Man No Way Home, Marvel. He wasn't planning to enter Marvel yet. Next in sequence would be Doctor Strange 2, and that introduced America, who could traverse the multiverse. Li Ming wanted that ability badly, but America herself couldn't control it. Scarlet Witch and Strange could, so he'd wait until his magic was stronger. He also wasn't sure whether America's power would be a Spider-Man bloodline or a generic superpower. If it were the latter, he might waste the opportunity. For now, he could only pick 1. Enter World ID 119, he confirmed. He even found himself missing Bruce a little. Teleportation gate opened. Countdown to entry, 1 minute. A warning from the Abyss, survive. Even with his reaction time 40 times that of an ordinary person, the swirling portal made him dizzy. He rubbed his eyes, blinked, and then saw Gotham's gray sky. As before, he materialized in an alley. He was still wearing the special suit from the John Wick world. The black, bulletproof tech held up well. Main mission activated. Main mission expansion. Mission requirement: within 24 months, expand your influence in 4 domains: official, economic, public opinion, and gang. Mission evaluation will be based on your status at the end of the countdown. Note, the mission is considered complete only if the evaluation reaches C rank or higher. It's still a series, Ming muttered. His first main mission in Gotham had been to establish a faction, so expansion made sense as the follow-up. Last time he'd created the Gotham Gang and become the nominal king of Gotham, but that influence was mostly limited to the gang domain. His reach in the official, economic, and public opinion spheres had been weak. The official domain had a little influence, but when Falcone was assassinated by Maroni, the city's elite tacitly agreed to Falcone's demise. They'd all moved to protect their own interests. Ming had only stayed 3 months on that run, and he hadn't been cautious enough. He'd concentrated on gang affairs, made aggressive use of Penguin, and generally avoided taking risks, so he left with only a titular kingship. He hadn't had time to deal with other major players like the Riddler, Jerome, or Scarecrow. Now he had 2 years, plus the Spider-Man bloodline and Iron Man armor. This time, he intended to make King of Gotham mean something. He wanted power. First, he needed to know how much time had passed. Ming covered his face, left the alley, and found a newsstand to read the headlines. 8 months had gone by since his last departure. Most of the papers were dull, but one headline from a few days ago caught his eye. Arkham Asylum attacked, 6 inmates escape. "Oswald, you messed up," he said under his breath. One of his clear instructions to Penguin had been to eliminate any family named Gallivan if they showed up in Gotham. Theodore Gallivan, leader of the Dumas family, was a key antagonist in Gotham's Season 2 first half. The Dumas were an old Gotham family that had clashed with the Waynes a century ago and been driven out. Their only aim since then had been to return and reclaim status. Gallivan changed his name, came back to Gotham after the Waynes' deaths, and tried to usurp the Waynes' position. He wanted to wipe clean his family's dishonor, even if it meant eliminating other old Gotham families. The Arkham Break was run by Gallivan's people. He posed as a philanthropist in public, but secretly organized criminals into the Maniac's gang to do his dirty work and serve as pawns. Famous members of that gang included Jerome. Ming frowned and scanned the escape list. Barbara Keene's name was printed in bold. "All right, Gordon messed up too," he said. A lot had happened while he'd been gone. Realizing Penguin might be compromised, Ming chose not to call him. He drew his glasses from his pocket and slid them on. "Friday, can you hear me?" "Yes, sir," Friday answered. "Can you connect to the internet?" "Yes, but the internet in this world is primitive. I'm afraid your capabilities will be limited." Ming understood. This world's hardware level constrained Friday. Gotham was a fictional setting, and the network infrastructure here was still in its infancy. No broadband, just dial-up speeds around 56K. Friday would have all its functions, but the low bandwidth was like giving a master tactician nothing to work with. Still, it was worth trying. Ming took off his glasses, returned into the alley, and used the Gotham scepter to scan for observers. Seeing no one watching, he put on the Camartage sling ring and drew a portal circle. His source power was universal and not limited by the rules of other universes, so the portal formed cleanly, if a little sluggishly. He stepped through. The other end opened at Wayne Manor. "Thank you to Ironblood Lotus and Swallow Sparrow for your monthly ticket support. Please keep reading, I beg you." Chapter 97, No One is Easy to Deal With. "You drove Alfred away?" Ming had meant to surprise Bruce, but Bruce surprised him instead. "We found a secret passage in my father's study," Bruce said, clutching Ming's sleeve. "Underneath it is a huge underground room. There was an iron door. I tried the password for ages and couldn't open it. Alfred and I finally blew it open. Inside was a supercomputer and a letter from my father. The letter said my parents' deaths weren't an accident." Bruce's voice went quiet with grief. He had always believed that night had been a tragic accident. He had never imagined it was murder. "I have to inherit my father's legacy, cleanse the Wayne Group, for Gotham." He looked up, eyes hard. "But Alfred smashed the computer. He must have destroyed the evidence my father collected." So that was it. Ming patted Bruce's head. The secret room they'd found was an early version of the Batcave. Bruce had opened it earlier than the original timeline. "I can understand how you feel. But you have to understand why Alfred did it, right?" Ming asked gently. Bruce lowered his head. Yes, I know Alfred was trying to protect me. Like you said, it's dangerous. This is the Wayne Group's business, the Wayne family's responsibility. Now it's mine. I can't run from it. Bruce's voice was firm. Li Ming, who'd recently seen another universe with a mischievous child, couldn't help thinking Bruce and Peter were polar opposites. Peter wanted to escape. Bruce, dangerously quickly, was ready to take everything on. He was only 13, and he acted far too aggressively. Confidence is good, Bruce, Li Ming said, but do you know how to do it? Bruce opened his mouth. How would he know? Aren't you back, Li? He demanded. Alfred used to be an agent. He's far more experienced than I am. Are you sure you don't want to find more help? Li Ming raised an eyebrow. Or, have you had enough of Alfred's waffles? Bruce let out a short laugh. Li Ming stood and walked toward the garage, glancing back at Bruce still sitting on the sofa. So what are you waiting for? You know which station Alfred went to, right? Bruce jumped up and hurried to Li Ming's side. Of course. While Li Ming dealt with the domestic affairs of a distraught young billionaire and a stubborn butler, Penguin had his own problems. Boss, Fish Mooney took another one of our blocks today. They sat at the long table that had once served as the Falcone family's conference table and was now the Gotham Gang's council table. A subordinate reported the latest loss to Penguin, who sat at the head of the table. Penguin closed his eyes, inhaled, and flexed his fingers. The man left quickly. Since Fish returned to Gotham, someone's been backing her, the subordinate said. She has money and muscle. She's taken almost half our territory. The gang leaders at the table were silent. Only Gabe, who had been with Penguin since Maroney's time, stood at his side and grumbled. After Fish had come back, Butch had gone back to his old boss. Victor Zsasz was capable but unreliable. Gabe was still Penguin's most dependable right hand. Penguin's irritation showed. Fish Mooney was a headache, and he couldn't spare the men to deal with the new problem, Theo Gallivan. Still can't find who's behind Fish? Penguin asked. Gabe shook his head. It's like they appeared out of thin air, and the people in Gotham's upper circles are starting to ignore the Gotham gang. Mr. Li Ming's been gone too long, Gabe added. A lot of people think we're weakened. Fewer council members support us. Boss, forget Li Ming's rules. Lead us back to the old, reckless ways, and we'll take the city back fast. Penguin's face didn't change. Gabe, did you think that up yourself, or did you hear it from someone? Gabe's eyes darted. He replied quickly. Carrie told me. Bring him in. Soon Carrie, one of Gabe's aides, was at Penguin's side. Penguin rose. You want us to abolish the gang's rules? Carrie hesitated, glanced at Gabe, then nodded. Yes, I think you're the one to lead us. Penguin slapped Carrie on the shoulder, congratulating him, then pulled a small knife from his pocket and drove it into Carrie. The man went down in a spray of blood as Penguin stabbed him again and again, relentless. The council sat paralyzed in horror. When Carrie stopped moving, Penguin opened his hand, dropped the knife, and spoke to the stunned men. The Gotham gang belongs to Mr. Ling, and it always will. The gang's operations must follow the strategies Mr. Li Ming set. It's for Gotham's good. If Fish Mooney wants war, I'll give her war. His voice was cold and final. When Mr. Li Ming returns, I will bring him a whole Gotham. Li Ming's ears ticked. He rubbed them, imagining Penguin was thinking of him. He was sitting at Gotham's bus station with Bruce and Alfred beside him. Bruce's tone had softened a little under Li Ming's calm persuasion, but he still made his terms clear. I know you want to protect me, but you can't stop me from taking my father's legacy, Bruce said. I understand, Alfred replied quietly. Beside him sat a small box with his personal things. I don't want you to go, Alfred, Bruce said earnestly, but you either stand with me or against me. Of course I'm with you, Master Bruce. I always have been, Alfred answered. He would never oppose Bruce. But you're too young. Going after this now would be suicide. Then teach me, Bruce begged. You survived dangerous things. Teach me to survive. I'll do anything. Train every day. Alfred shook his head, a little weary. You said that before. Bruce had learned some boxing from both Li Ming and Alfred, but where Li Ming had been steady, Bruce had let his training lapse. That was before. Now I know the truth. I know what I have to do. He sounded like he was swearing an oath. Then, thinking for a beat, he added, If you want, I'll go back to school. It was true. Bruce hadn't been to school in a long time. Alfred saw the resolve in him, and made one final demand. If I agree to help you prepare, you must obey me completely. No exceptions. Do you understand? He extended his hand. Bruce broke into a bright smile and quickly clasped it. Deal. But you have to fix the computer, Bruce added once they'd sealed the bargain. Alfred's face fell. Computers had never been his strength. How can I do that? Bruce put on a stern look and avoided Alfred's eyes. Not my problem. I didn't break it. He walked back to the car, his step light. Li Ming, can you fix computers? Alfred asked when he caught Li Ming alone. Fix computers? Who fixes computers if they're a decent person? Li Ming shook his head decisively, then flashed a mischievous grin at Alfred. Feels good to fool a child, doesn't it? You're retreating to advance, Alfred said with a straight face. You know you can't stop Bruce, so you slow him down by destroying the computer and make him more willing to be managed. Li Ming shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. Alfred gave a faint smile and walked away quickly, laughing silently, but keeping it to himself. Thanks to Book Friends 222010627430, Chiyun and Meteor, AKMQS, Book Friend 29051054137, Daoran, Rayunal, 80 Ho Kansudashu, it turned out to be the West Wind. I didn't dig up your ancestral grave. Sleeping in Class, who takes a serious screen name. Erming, Plumber Fei, Chingyu Weibi, for the monthly ticket support from 14 great contributors. Thanks to it turned out to be the West Wind for the reward support. So happy, ha ha ha. Shamelessly asking for continued reads, haha. Chapter 98, The Overjoyed Penguin. Back at Wayne Manor, Li Ming finally got the full picture of what had happened during the 8 months he'd been away, thanks to Alfred and Bruce. Penguin had taken a fall. At first, everything had been going well. Oswald's Gotham gang was thriving, but Fish Mooney had escaped from the hospital where he'd been planning to finish her organ deal before Li Ming even arrived. 3 months ago, Fish resurfaced, using the remnants of her influence and resources, bolstered by an unknown backer, to expand rapidly. Penguin's attempts to mount a full-scale counterattack inexplicably failed. What had been stable in quiet times was now unraveling, and with Li Ming absent for so long, Gotham's power players were content to watch the two rivals tear at each other from the sidelines. The Gotham gang now controlled less than 60% of the city. The decline was obvious. If Fish pushed any harder, the whole thing could collapse. There were changes at the GCPD, too. Gordon had caught the serial killer Jason Lennon. Li Ming had warned him about the killer, but at trial the judge acquitted Lennon for lack of evidence. The killer vanished afterward. Around the same time, Gordon and Barbara's relationship fell apart. Barbara couldn't stand how wrapped up Gordon was in Gotham's mess. She rekindled things with Montoya, then later tried to come back to Gordon, only to find Lee Tompkins at his side. Heartbroken, Barbara started to self-destruct. Lennon, who had been lurking in the shadows, took advantage of her vulnerability, twisted her mind, and turned her into a villain. She ended up in Arkham for killing her parents. Now both Barbara and Jerome had joined Gallivan's ranks, information only Li Ming possessed. Put together, Li Ming quickly suspected who was backing Fish, Gallivan. In the original story, Gallivan had kidnapped Penguin's mother, forced Oswald to help eliminate rivals during his mayoral campaign, and ultimately killed her. With Gallivan back in play, he wouldn't miss the chance to strike. Lee, what have you been doing all this time? Bruce asked before he could stop himself. I went to learn magic from a wizard, Li Ming replied, giving Bruce a wink. Bruce turned his head away and went back to the documents in his hand. The revelation that his parents had been murdered had made him even more focused. He buried himself in files and case notes, trying to find any clue. Li Ming shrugged a little. The truth was always hard to accept. Besides, unless absolutely necessary, he didn't intend to flaunt his extraordinary strength or magic. Gotham didn't have that many truly strange beings yet. He'd tried the limits in private. He could lift a small car with one hand and throw it dozens of meters. Still, like in warfare, attacking a city directly was clumsy. Attacking hearts and minds was far more effective. Li Ming didn't stay at Wayne Manor long before returning to Gotham City. He would still live there, but this trip wasn't the leisurely visit of the last time. Before leaving, he pulled Alfred aside for some practice. He'd taken a beating the last time Alfred taught him hand to hand. Not bad. You lasted a minute, Alfred said, eyes incredulous as Li Ming had pinned him to the floor. Li Ming felt pleased, remembering Alfred's disbelief. With his level 8 combat skills and the level 6 John Wick combat template, even when he restrained himself to normal human strength, getting Alfred to hold out a minute was impressive. Those skills weren't useless now that he had the Spider-Man bloodline. On the contrary, they made him better at using his current physical gifts. Even if Peter showed up, Li Ming figured he wouldn't be easy to beat. When he finally dialed a number, it rang and rang. Penguin, fretting in his villa, irritably snatched up the phone. He'd been getting nothing but bad news from his lieutenants. Territory lost, men taken, businesses seized. If you lost ground, why didn't they take it back? No wonder they couldn't be bosses, he thought. He expected another report. He answered without looking at the caller ID and froze when the voice he'd been craving came through. Oswald, how have you been? Li Ming's voice was calm. Mr. Li Ming, Penguin cried, nearly choking on the words. It's me. I'm doing well. I've missed you, Mr. Li Ming, the little penguin blurted out, voice breaking as he hunched over. I'm so sorry, Mr. Li Ming. Li Ming cut him off. Don't blame yourself, Oswald. Do you know what I value most about you? What is that? Oswald asked, frantic. Resilience, Li Ming said firmly. What I admire most is your indomitable spirit. It wasn't all Oswald's fault that Fish had counterattacked so successfully. Fish was a capable boss, and with Galavant's covert support, it wasn't easy to hold the Gotham gang together. In that light, keeping the organization intact for 3 months was no small achievement. A little territory means nothing. If it's taken, we'll take it back. What matters is that you learn and grow. Hearing Li Ming's voice at that moment, when he'd been failing, moved Penguin deeply. He had braced himself for a scolding, but instead found only patience and encouragement. All the hardships of the last months suddenly seemed bearable. Yes, Mr. Li Ming, I'll take the territory back, he vowed. Penguin's resolve flared. But first, there are some things we need to sort out, Li Ming added. We? Penguin's ears pricked up. You're back in Gotham? Yes, Oswald, I'm back. That's wonderful. Penguin leapt up but forced himself to calm down when he remembered he was on the phone. He managed a composed, almost formal greeting. Welcome back, Mr. Li Ming. Oh, and find someone for me, Li Ming said. Who? Penguin asked, suddenly serious. He called for his men while rifling through a newspaper whose headline read, Maniac Gang Forms. The name Li Ming gave, Valeska, sounded familiar. Cicero Valeska. Valeska? Penguin's face tightened. Then he realized. Jerome Valeska's father. Jerome, the madman who killed his own mother. Yes, Li Ming confirmed. All right, I'll find him right away, Penguin said. Tell our people to meet at the docks. We'll deal with your little problem first. Li Ming gave an address. Good, thank you. Penguin felt a flush of shame that the first thing Li Ming did on his return was clean up Penguin's messes, but he couldn't hide his excitement. After hanging up, he danced around in front of his lieutenants, finally settling into his signature sinister smile. The King of Gotham, my Mr. Li Ming, is back. Gotham, are you ready? Thanks to Incarnation Taoist and Night Rain Shao for the generous monthly votes. How does one write 6,000 words a day? It's so hard. Please keep reading. Wink. Chapter 99, Establishing Authority. Gotham's docks had its own kind of resurrection. Penguin had been thrown into the water and left for dead more times than anyone could count, yet every time he came back. Other villains might have their Dr. Hugo. Penguin's spring was the docks. That was why Li Ming had summoned the Gotham Gang's senior members here, because this was where Penguin would be reborn. Li Ming intended to back him for mayor. Of the 4 pillars of Li Ming's main plan, the gang's domain, the Gotham Gang's base, was already secure. For the economy, he had Bruce's support. For the official sector, the gang's deterrence was enough to scrape through. Public opinion, however, was the real problem. The Gotham Gang was still a gang. How many ordinary citizens would willingly side with them? Even if the gang maintained order and had some prestige, it wasn't nearly enough. Li Ming planned a purge to reshape the gang, then elevate Penguin to mayor, turning the organization into a massive, popular force. A gang boss as mayor sounded preposterous, except this was Gotham. In the original story, Penguin did become mayor, albeit briefly. Li Ming wanted Penguin to rise by popular demand, and he had a plan. He was a master at exploiting plots and other people's schemes. The useful pawn this time was Theo Gallivan. Gallivan had freed 6 prisoners, including Jerome and Barbara, and within days staged a spectacle, throwing people from a newspaper building and declaring the formation of the maniacs. He would later send them to massacre a police station and disrupt a charity gala, only to appear at that same gala as Gotham's champion of virtue, publicly stabbing Jerome and winning enormous public favor. Gallivan did not tell Jerome about this part of the plan. Citizens, starved for decisive action, adored Gallivan's theatrics. Then, feigning retaliation by the gang, Gallivan announced his candidacy for mayor. He kidnapped Penguin's mother to force Penguin's cooperation, murdered members of Gotham's old families to avenge his own, and used the chaos to seize power. Li Ming would add fuel to Gallivan's fire. If Gallivan wanted to kill, Li Ming would help him kill more. Disobedient officials, families hostile to the Gotham gang, so long as Gallivan bore the blame. Conveniently, the Gallivan's vendetta was already against many of Gotham's old families. When Gallivan's identity and motives were exposed, people would blame him for the bloodshed, and even Fish Mooney, whom he backed, would suffer. Then, with Gotham leaderless and terrified, Penguin could step forward as the stabilizing force and win the people's hearts. As the philosopher Zhang Mazi supposedly said, "They will follow whoever wins." Penguin arrived quickly, trailing a dense crowd. "Mr. Li Ming!" he cried. At the sight of Li Ming, Penguin hurried forward like an eager student. "Oswald, why are you still so thin? I told you to take care of yourself." Li Ming patted his shoulder. The little penguin closed his eyes, savoring the praise. The other Gotham gang leaders watched Li Ming with surprise and uncertainty. Some had only recently joined and were seeing the legendary leader for the first time. He was young and striking, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that emphasized a flawless physique, holding a scepter like a noble heir. He looked nothing like a typical gang boss. "Some of you I've met before. Some of you, this is the first time," Li Ming said as he stepped to the front of the crowd. He felt no stage fright. After all, none of them alone posed a real challenge to him. "Let me introduce myself. I am Li Ming, your boss. Everyone knows the Gotham gang is in a bad place right now. I'm glad you're still here," he continued, his tone reassuring at first. Then it changed. "But I've heard that some among you don't have pure intentions, that some have close ties to our rivals." Penguin's expression went rigid. He stalked forward, but since Li Ming was speaking, he didn't interrupt, only glared coldly at the assembled leaders. Penguin had long suspected moles in his organization, but had never been able to catch them. "I am a lenient man," Li Ming said. "If you come forward of your own accord, I will let the past go. But if you harbor any wishful thinking," he smiled without warmth, "you will lose far more than this opportunity. You have 1 minute," he declared. The leaders exchanged tense looks. Many who were weak-willed had already defected. Those who remained were patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal their loyalty to the other side. With Li Ming present, they would be visible symbols, easy to use as warnings. "Kevin Wiggins, Sonny Lowell, Martha Terenzo," Li Ming began, letting the names fall like stones. Realization spread through the crowd. These were the traitors. Penguin's shock and fury were visible. No wonder his attempts to encircle Fish had failed. The rot had been inside his ranks. The 6 leaders named held significant positions and had long been protected by only a few of Fish's confidants. How had they been exposed? Penguin signaled his men to surround the accused. Kevin, clearly the most dangerous of them, pulled a gun and shouted, "Seize Li Ming and break out." "Oswald, stand down!" Li Ming put a hand on Penguin's arm and stopped him from unleashing his troops. "Listen to me." Penguin obeyed. Li Ming ordered Penguin's men to block the subordinates of the accused, leaving a wide space in the center. The 6 leaders, with their remaining followers, 11 people in total, rushed him. Guns barked. Li Ming drew his pistol and took out the 3 charging men in front of him. Then, instead of advancing, he stepped back with the scepter in his left hand and the pistol in his right. He moved with a dancer's grace, sidestepping and firing. 2 more assailants fell. The leaders had fought their way to this position, but faced with Li Ming's speed and precision, they looked fragile. "Kill him," Kevin roared, giving up hope and trying to take Li Ming down with him. He fired 4 shots at point-blank range, only to watch Li Ming dodge them as if he had expected every move. Li Ming lowered his gun, drew the staff sword concealed within his scepter, and with swift, decisive strikes cut down 3 more attackers. 2 of the traitors immediately collapsed to their knees, begging for mercy. Kevin, whom Li Ming had saved for last, scrambled toward the water in a desperate bid for escape. The docks had been Penguin's salvation before. Kevin could not count on the same miracle. Li Ming moved faster. He intercepted Kevin, pressing the staff sword to Kevin's throat. Before Kevin could scream, the blade fell. The head came away and plunged into the dark water. It wasn't the way Kevin wanted to go, but the outcome was the same. Li Ming had said he was lenient. He was nothing if not decisive when he needed to be. Li Ming had made his point. Loyalty would be demanded, and betrayal would be punished. In a city that lived on fear and spectacle, public purges like this reshaped the balance of power. Penguin stood there, stunned and grateful, while the rest of the gang inhaled the lesson. Thanks to Tai Hunyuan, Jingtong Xuanwanchang Dadi, Spinning Orange, Nanggong Hongjin, and IELTS Not 8 not changing name for their monthly ticket support. Thanks to It Was Shifeng Ya and Bookfriend 2021 218558413 for their reward support. Chapter 100, Stabilizing the Gotham Gang. Cutting melons and vegetables. With Li Ming's current strength, if he wanted to kill ordinary people, no matter how many came, they would be throwing themselves into the grave. If he hadn't wanted to avoid a scene, he could have even used the Gotham Scepter to block Kevin's bullets directly. But restraint was enough. In Gotham, you always kept a few tricks in reserve. After dealing with the traitors, Li Ming flicked his staff sword. The blood dripped to the floor in a thin line, leaving the blade spotless. Seeing the terrified faces of the other Gotham Gang members around him, Li Ming knew his point had been made. He had come to claim real power, and having been absent for so long, the first order of business was to establish authority. Drag them away. He waved toward the 2 kneeling, pleading traitors. Subordinates stepped forward to haul them off. Penguin would deal with them later. The show of force was over, but for a gang boss, the more important deterrent was the demonstration of influence. So Li Ming did what he did best. He picked up his phone and called Judge Thibault. Thibault was Falcone's man. Falcone had filmed an intimate tape of Thibault and Kid Loki and used it to keep the judge in line. After Falcone fell, the tape had been handed to Penguin, but Thibault had taken advantage of the Gotham Gang's internal chaos, stolen it back, and then turned his pressure on Penguin, creating serious trouble. Li Ming expected the judge wouldn't pick up. To his surprise, the call connected just as the ringing ended. "You're back in Gotham?" Thibault's voice had an edge of apprehension, but he sounded confident. He thought he still held cards. "I heard the Gotham Gang had a little misunderstanding with you, Mr. Thibault." Li Ming's tone was as calm as ever. "Misunderstanding? Heh." Thibault, sitting on the sofa in his villa, snorted. "Want to make up? Too late." "I'm no longer threatened by you, and I can't be bought," Li Ming said. "But your actions have made the Gotham Gang a target. You do well to think about how to protect yourself." Thibault spoke with a certainty that suggested impending doom for the gang. Li Ming's pulse quickened. He had stumbled on unexpected intelligence. He decided not to reveal that. Instead, he shook his head and smiled. "You've got the wrong idea, Mr. Thibault. The misunderstanding, I mean, is..." His tone went cold. "When the Gotham Gang asks you to do something, when did it become necessary for them to hold leverage over you?" Thibault was momentarily stunned. At a time like this, the Gotham Gang boss actually dared to speak to him like that. He was a judge of Gotham. Significant influence, even if not the most powerful on the bench. "What do you mean?" Thibault demanded. "It seems our judge hasn't quite grasped the situation." Li Ming relaxed his voice again. "Say hello, Victor." "Who is Victor?" Thibault asked, confused. At that moment, a bald young man suddenly darted into the room. No eyebrows, round, unblinking eyes that made Thibault shiver. The man stepped forward and said calmly, "Hello, I'm Victor." Victor plucked Thibault's phone from where it had fallen and activated the speaker. "Although you slipped once, Thibault, you still like your male escorts," Li Ming's voice said, flat and cold. Then Victor shoved Thibault's new male escort into view. Tebow braced for blackmail for another scandalous recording to appear. What he hadn't expected was a knife. Before Tebow could stop him, Victor slit the young man's throat. Blood sprayed across the expensive carpet. Tebow stared, petrified, then crumpled to the floor. "This is just a warning," Ming said into the phone. "If there's a next time, you know what will happen." "You," Tebow began, voice tight with fear. Ming cut him off. "Many Gotham gang members were arrested recently. You understand what needs to be done, right?" Yes, Tebow stammered. "Do a good job. The Gotham gang will not let go of those who offend us, and we will reward those who help." The intimidation had landed. Ming shifted from threat to enticement. "Chief Justice Fouye is getting older," he said casually. "You know what that means." Tebow's breath hitched. He understood clearly. Fouye was the most powerful judge in the local court. Under normal circumstances, Tebow would never have a shot at that seat. But if Fouye were to step down or die, Tebow might find himself in a very different position. Greed and ambition quickly replaced the horror of the blood on his carpet. "I understand, Your Excellency Ming," Tebow said quickly. "The Gotham gang will have unobstructed access in the court." Ming smiled and ended the call. The threat from the authorities had been neutralized. Tebow still held sway in Gotham, and now he would signal to other officials that the Gotham gang was back in play. Even those who wanted to avoid trouble would think twice about pushing the gang too far. Some might try to strike now to crush the gang's resurgence, but most were fence-sitters. For $100,000 or $80,000, they wouldn't risk their lives. The message Ming sent in one phone call was far greater than money. Penguin and the loyal gang members looked at Ming with admiration. He was the man who had built the Gotham gang and become its king in a matter of months. 8 months of absence, and then a return that used information they never had to purge dissidents and methods they hadn't seen to win over a judge. Ming had instantly stabilized the situation. Penguin knew he could not have done what Ming did. Tebow had too many bodyguards. Getting to him was nearly impossible without inside help. Victor could handle dirty, dangerous jobs, but even he moved faster than anyone when the risks spiked, which is also why he had survived through the gang's many bosses. Maybe only Ming could command him. What Penguin never knew was why Victor obeyed Ming so absolutely. When Ming had found Victor, he had stepped out of a sudden spark circle that appeared from nowhere. From that moment, Victor believed Ming was destined to win, and Victor always sided with winners. As for where Ming had gotten the list of traitors, that answer lay with Fish's most trusted lieutenant, Butch. Butch had been turned by Victor and was unable to refuse orders from him and Penguin. Fish had always kept Butch away from Penguin, but teleportation portals make inconvenient meetings a lot easier.